Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans, and we probably have a few non-football fans that actually stumble upon this show. I'm convinced that we have confirmed people in Baltimore that watch this show. So who knows the demographic that we're pulling in at this point? Can guarantee probably nobody from Belgium. Welcome back to your favorite football podcast over the last year plus. It is the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Your favorite chaotic trio is back. A third of us has a little ukulele that we could play. The other third of us has a drum that we randomly got when he was like, I think 10, 11 years old. I've already forgotten the age that Rick got this drum back when he was younger. And I guess that technically makes me the lead singer and vocalist. And oh, dear God, that is not a good place to be in if that is the case. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, introducing, as always, Iceman Jerry, welcoming you into this affair that we're going to have over the next, who knows, hour and a half, 2 hours. The show goes long sometimes, ladies and gentlemen. Strap in and get ready for the ride. Joining me, as always, my compatriots of chaos. First off, on the same level as me, technically on the screen. That's the only reason I'm saying that. I didn't really know how else to introduce it. Justin Zuckman, Zucktails Zucker. How we doing, bud?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. Took me like 10 seconds as we were waiting to get started here to come up with that intro. And also, the last third of our troublesome triumvirate here, Podfather Rick. Rick, how we doing?
Justin and I, our spots are very fungible, which actually means mutually interchangeable. So that's what that word actually means. Yes, we were talking about what's a non-fungible NFT off air, but that's what it means. So to the off-air conversation we were having, Justin, I said, if anyone could be fungible, it's you. So I think you should be insulted by that.
I was going to say.
Yeah. I regret that. You are a non-fungible piece of this entity that is a I don't know. I mean, would I be the Lepidus of this triumvirate if we're doing ancient Rome or whatever the case is? I don't know. I am a minister of the Universal Life Church, so I'm technically the high priest. So that is Lepidus. So that would work out in my favor.
That works.
Yeah,
that works out well. And considering the results of
Judas,
Judas,
I'm the Jew here.
I mean, oh god, what a fire start to the show. I was gonna say, I mean, you could fill in the last 2/3 of the triumvirate considering what the results from last week's end of the pick challenge was. Of course, if you watched last week and you remember, you already know what it is. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we get further into the show, ladies and gentlemen. But last week was the end of the Sports Agents of Chaos regular season pick challenge, the inaugural challenge. Oh, well done, boys. We made it through a full regular season. I think that deserves a little bit of a quick hand clap right there. But even with the regular season over, that means absolutely nothing. We move on straight to the playoffs, and we're going to be talking about playoff football later in the show. But of course, as always, as you guys know, fun football chaos is the tagline. We start with the fun. Our games keeper, our games master, Justin, we begin with some trivia.
All right. So how about some end of the season trivia for you guys? And we're going to talk regular season NFL records. Deontay Johnson actually set an NFL record this season with the most regular season catches without a touchdown at 86. Who is number 2?
And to think, right? And to think that, if he had one touchdown more, the Steelers would have been in the playoffs.
Right? Oh, yeah. Man. See, it's funny. I've seen the Deontay Johnson record thing at least once or twice, but the Instagram page that I always see it on never mentions who was second place. So I literally could not even venture a guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
why I looked it up.
Dang you. Dang you.
La-dee-da.
All right, Rick, let's think of this. Who just would catch the ball all the livelong day and never score a touchdown?
Cole Kmet. Until this year. So
maybe most career catches until his first touchdown.
Maybe. Jurg, I'm leaning towards a running back here, maybe.
Okay.
Because I feel like that they're an option that's like the last ditch option in the flat, but their running backs can make considerable catches here and there. So they can chalk up like 5 or 6 catches a game, and that leads into, if you're doing 16, that's what, maybe, or 5 catches a game at 16 is like 80, maybe somewhere in that range. So a fullback, maybe like a Mike Allstott or a Mike Tolbert even. Larry Centers, I'm thinking. I think we're thinking of like an older older school name anyways. I'm not thinking of like a modern day, not modern day, but like a 2000s and not beyond type of player.
No, yeah, that's fair. Especially because with you mentioned how involved the running backs in the receiving game are now. Like it feels like all the running backs that do a lot of catching are going to catch at least a singular touchdown at
You
some
would
point.
think, yeah, you would think.
Especially like the advent of the last couple. Like if you look at the receiving, the caliber of receiving backs just over the last 5-6 years alone, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, David Johnson, to name a few, they all definitely had at least a touchdown, if not more, from their seasons that they had. David Johnson, of course, getting 50 and 50. Was it every single game that year or all but one his season? Christian McCaffrey with the 1K. Then Austin Eckler, just a receptions machine for the Chargers out of the backfield. So
right, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. This is a tough one. Let me throw a name onto the board here, just to see if we can kind of get this ball rolling here. I'm gonna go back into the ether like I usually do, because you know me, I love pulling out names from guys you barely ever remember from way back when in the past. I'm gonna say that there was a time when this running back was on the Jets and the Cardinals, and I think those were offenses that were paltry at best. Adrian Morrell.
Ooh, that is a good name.
Isn't it?
Yeah. He is not my number 2 guy.
Yeah. Because, again, like, that was back when the Cardinals played in the NFC East, which made no sense to anybody. But, I'm thinking paltry offenses there, So, and the Jets in the mid-'90s were just trash.
God.
Until Keyshawn showed up.
It's so dang. Because the further back we go, the more I struggle. So now I'm just starting. I'm trying to come up with a name. God. Most receptions in a season without a touchdown.
It is a long-standing record, Jared.
Oh God! So is it going even further back than what Rick was even thinking?
What do you say, like the 90s? Yeah, it's older than the 90s.
Oh God, I may have to just secede my two guesses to Rick here because I can't name you a single receiver from the 70s if it goes that.
Well, again, it doesn't have to be a receiver. It could also be a running back from the 70s. So there's a lot of different running backs. It could be a tight end. Yeah.
Not, but it could have been.
I
like it. It doesn't have to just be a wide receiver.
I mean, I like the fact that he basically confirmed that it's not a tight end.
Yeah, I mean,
does that help you?
Not really.
I don't know. Lawrence Cager would have been my next guess, but obviously he's not a tight end anymore, so whatever.
God, I'm struggling. Running backs, a lot of receptions, but no touchdowns back then.
Like I got to think too. What teams might have had a bad offense or a bad wide receiver core?
Yeah.
And in the 80s, there were a lot of teams like that.
Well, hold on. I can't think of a name on this team, but what about the early Buccaneers that were just awful?
Yeah. There's a name I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, because the first couple seasons of Tampa Bay Buccaneers football, I mean, there's a reason. I think they still hold the record for most consecutive losses to this day, which was 26 in a row, spanning a couple seasons. So
who were the Bucs running backs of the 80s? Cadillac Williams. No, I'm kidding. It wasn't. Remember way back when we had the Jeff Jordan question, and that name was just throwing me for a loop, but I figured it was an answer.
Right.
I got a name.
Okay.
I got a similar name. It's not a guy that any of us would know by any stretch of the imagination. It really isn't, because again, the guy didn't do much, but clearly he held a record for a while. but I don't remember his first name. His last name was Wilder, but I don't remember what his first name was.
For what team?
Tampa Bay, I think.
Wilder.
Is it James, maybe?
Yeah, that was the first name that came to my mind. James Wilder. Is it?
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
What
might be.
What if we just go 3 different iterations with the last name Wilder and just change the first name every time? Rick?
James, Jimmy, and Jim Bob. Maybe yeah. James, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Maybe. I'll go James Wilder, who may not even be an NFL player.
Van Wilder.
He may not be. But it is. It is James Wilder, 1984 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Long-time leader in receptions until the record was broken by Mike Evans. And he also ranks first in Bucs history in rushing yards and rushing attempts. He was that, bell cow back that touched the ball almost every play. In fact, he actually set the NFL record for carries and touches in a single season at one point, which it was later broken. But yeah, the most catches ever in a season without catching a touchdown, James Wilder Sr.
Wow. Oh, senior. That is a clear distinction right there.
Yeah.
If I had said the third, it wouldn't have worked.
Did Junior ever make the NFL?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, he's not important.
Let me see. Yeah, he did. He
really?
Was a practice squad member. So kind of.
So he couldn't hack it in the NFL, but he was on the 2014 Florida State National Championship team.
Really?
And he won the Grey Cup in 2017, and then with Edmonton. So he's won a college title, a Canadian title, but he's not good enough for the NFL.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah.
Postseason roster pickup.
Right.
James Wilder Jr.
Oh, man.
You never know.
You never know.
Hey, maybe he'll join an XFL team when they come up and he wins in whatever the hell the XFL trophy is going to be called.
Yeah, maybe.
He just adds to the trophy case, just has these rings of it.
Right.
That'd be entertaining. Speaking of entertaining, another outstanding trivia question. Do we have another trivia or are we moving on to the next round, Justin?
Move on.
Let's go. Let's go to a nice game of Would You Rather.
All right. We're going to stick with some Bucks, actually. And I'm going to bring up a name that we did just bring up in Mike Evans. And I'm going to bring up his draft classmate, Davante Adams.
Oh.
You had a choice, knowing what they're going to do in their career. Who you got? Mike Evans or Davante Adams?
So it's funny because these two careers started out very different. Davante Adams, in his first two and a half seasons in the league, he was getting the Nelson Aguilar and Jalen Reagor jokes from the NFL internet. He really was. People honestly forget this. He was the guy that the joke was that, flu seasons come around, everyone got sick except for Davante Adams because he can't even catch a cold. Like, it was legit. He was struggling his first two and a half seasons to get into the Green Bay offense. So for Green Bay fans, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs struggling. You have a history of your young receiver struggling here. But he was struggling at first, eventually got into this rhythm with Rodgers. And even though the season in Vegas didn't turn out the way he would have expected that clearly at all, he still did his thing. Mike Evans, on the other hand, 9 straight seasons to start his career, if I'm not mistaken, with at least 1,000 receiving yards. 10? Oh, it's even longer than I thought. Like he is like from the jump, you saw the talent in him that made him great in college. And there was without a shadow of a doubt just how good he was. There was never any questions early in his career about who he would be. It was guaranteed this guy was a lock, multiple-time Pro Bowler, top wide receiver on a very good team. But the key thing is now that we know what's happened, and hindsight is 2020, Evans was a first-round pick, a very high first-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, and Adams went in the 3rd round, if memory serves. If we have to do...
Actually, I have it right here. He was the 2nd round. He was the 2nd round.
He was second. Okay, so he was the 2nd round pick. So
Evans went pick 7, and Davante Adams went pick 53.
53. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
But I mean, also you can't really say that because Mike Evans went to a big name school and Davante Adams went to Fresno State. I mean,
Sure.
You can't really throw that out there as a thing because people just have problems drafting from West Coast schools. I mean, that's another thing you got to worry about too. Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously, this is one of those hindsight 2020 questions, and we see what's happened now. But
You want some stats?
I mean, I think I have my answer, but sure.
Oh, sure. What would you prefer?
I'd go Devontae Adams. I think we've said it on this podcast before, especially Rick. I think he's the most complete receiver in the league, all things considered. I think he's an absolute beast. And yes, this season in Vegas has maybe taken him down a slight notch, but I think he's still immensely talented. And I think we can all agree, like any quarterback would say, please, we'll gladly take Devontae Adams.
Well, if we're talking today,
yeah,
certainly Devontae Adams had a much better season this year than Mike Evans. Mike Evans did have a major slump, but I'm talking full career.
See, and that's where I tend to lean on Mike Evans a little bit more. I think he has done everything that you could have asked him to do coming from the draft slot that he's been in. But also the fact of the matter is that, I'm going off of this year just for this stat. Devontae Adams was targeted 180 times this season. That to me is like you need to basically run your offense around Devontae Adams for good reason. Whereas Mike Evans, you can run it with him. I think that there's a difference in quality there where Mike Evans is just a different receiver where he draws the attention and you're not going to throw him the ball every time versus Devontae Adams being the guy who you will throw the ball every time because Mike Evans can draw that best corner off and that can stunt and give a second or third option a good day because, Mike Evans is drawing double coverage. Somebody's going to be open. Devontae Adams is drawing double coverage. Do you trust Hunter Renfrow? Do you trust Alan Lazard? Do you trust, Robert Tonyan? Yeah, any of those guys? I really don't. Mike Evans, I think, is just a better player, a more consummate all-around option to have in the core. And for me, I mean, I think he's as good as Devontae Adams is. Devontae Adams is a no-nonsense, excellent wide receiver. If it were me, because I think about building a team, I build it with Mike Evans in mind.
That's fair.
I will give you guys some stats right now. First of all, to your point, Rick, he was targeted the second most in the league. However, he also played on the team that really gave most of their offensive focus to the running back. Josh Jacobs, who was leading rusher this year, was second in the league in touches. He had 384 carries, which is a tremendous amount. For their careers.
Well, here's the thing about that, too.
And he's frozen.
Oh, I thought that was just like a very dramatic pause.
I think you're right. That would have been epic.
So to go into the stats, Mike Evans does have the edge in career receiving yards, obviously, with those 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's got 10,425, while Devontae Adams, by no stretch of the imagination, has a poor 9,637 yards. So it's about 800 yards difference. Devontae does have the lead in total receptions at 769. Mike Evans is at 683. And touchdowns is also fairly close. Devontae has 87, while Mike Evans has 81. Now, I did have this question loaded up for a little while. It's possible that 3-touchdown performance by Mike Evans was not in there. But, I mean, Devontae finished the year with 2 touchdown catches in the last game, so I can't imagine it's that big of a difference.
But here's my reasoning. Here's my reasoning for why I went the way that I did. If you look at this season specifically, yeah, Mike Evans only had 77 catches, but he was second to Chris Godwin, who had a big year with 104. Devontae had 100, and the next receiver for the Raiders had 57 catches. So you're going to Devontae Adams more often than not. But Mike Evans is that guy who's going to draw away, the best corner, so that a guy like Chris Godwin can have a big game, so that a guy like Russell Gage can find his way open in the end zone. Devontae Adams is going to draw that double coverage, and you're still going to want to throw him the ball because A, yeah, he's a great receiver, but B, you have no other options there. Mac Hollins does not strike the same fear that Chris Godwin or Julio Jones does to me.
Well, I was going to say, that's kind of why I'm picking Devontae Adams, because, yes, I think either of them, if you double coverage them, they would still be an option you want to go to. But, Devontae Adams for years now, this goes back to the end of his tenure in Green Bay, did not necessarily have a reliable number 2 receiver with him. Mike Evans has had the Chris Godwins of the world and the Rob Gronkowskis of the world in that offense with him. Now, the fact that he's still gotten the 1,000 receiving yards, that's not me taking away from him. I think it's still impressive. You have those guys with you and you still get your 1K. But Devontae Adams has been the definitive number 1, the definitive everyone knows in the big throws, you're going to get the ball. And he's now led the NFL in receiving touchdowns twice in his career, 2 of the last 3 seasons, 6 straight Pro Bowls, 3-time first-team All-Pro. I'm going Devontae Adams. And like you mentioned Chris Godwin, I don't want to use that as a detractor to Mike Evans, but I almost use it as a way to prop up because who the heck, like you mentioned how many times he was targeted, Justin. Who the heck is there to throw the ball to in that Raiders team this year? Darren Waller has been hurt for each of the last 2 seasons and is really starting, injuries are starting to show on him. Hunter Renfrow has been overrated for the last year and a half, and I'm finally glad that some people are realizing. Devontae Adams is the receiving passing game for that team.
That's what I wanted to bring up. I don't think you can penalize Mike Evans for having Chris Godwin in that thing. I mean, it's not Devontae Adams' fault that Hunter Renfrow had a disappointing season and Darren Waller missed most of the season, and their next best option was Matt Collins, who had a decent season. He was a good player as a young guy, but it's not Chris Godwin, obviously. You can't take away from either player because of their surrounding pieces. In fact, if you did want to say that, you could make the point that for the first 7 years of his career, he had Jameis Winston throwing him the ball.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not taking away. I'm saying
Adams had Aaron Rodgers.
But I'm saying it's impressive for both guys because on one end,
I think it's fairly even when you're talking about supporting cast, because you could say, all right, this guy had more coverage drawn because he had better receivers, but then this guy had the better quarterback, but then this, you know what I mean? It goes back and forth. So you have to think purely player.
Right. But that's my thing too, is that, you're thinking purely player, but I'm also thinking if I'm a wide receiver who knows he's not a number 1 option right now, where would I go to that I could probably have a decent year because that number 1 receiver is just so good that the defense's scheme to get him away from the ball? Like the Raiders, that offense is Devontae or bust. But the Bucks, that offense is Mike Evans. Okay, you know what? Who's open in the end zone? Kyle Rudolph.
But that's
I thought was dead.
Head coach.
Kyle Rudolph had 1 touchdown this year.
I know. And we can't see.
Devontae Adams played on the team with the leading rusher for the season. So look, I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm just saying there's so many factors. That offense didn't run through Devontae Adams. That offense ran through Josh Jacobs this year.
And he's still and to the point again, Devontae,
earned a paycheck, by the way.
Yeah, right. And again, first off, shout out to Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk, and Devontae Adams and AJ Brown for all getting paid and actually playing up to their contract extensions. First of all, but not like the thing with Evans and Adams is that you can make cases on both sides. You could go tit for tat with whatever arguments you will. At the end of the day, there's no technically wrong answer. But if you're going to make us decide here, Rick's going with Mike Evans. I'm running with Devontae Adams. I got my guy. If you're talking about resume differences, there's one resume difference, and that's just the piece of trophy. That's the Lombardi. That's the ring that Mike Evans has over Devontae Adams. But yet again, I don't think that that's not necessarily a thing that I think should take away from Adams. Not that it can't add to Evans' case, but how many all Hall of Fame wide receivers ended up not getting a championship in their career? A good few when you think about it. How many wide receivers of this past generation who are going to be in the Hall of Fame didn't get a championship in their career? The Super Bowl might be the difference between Mike Evans actually getting into the Hall of Fame in his career or getting stronger consideration than I think most would give him. Devontae Adams' career said and done. He doesn't need a Super Bowl for me to consider him into the Hall of Fame. So that's, again, I'm going with Devontae Adams.
You know, what's funny about that is that maybe 20, 25 years ago, a similar conversation could be had between Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. Because what's the big difference between the two?
The hard
one moon Dallas and one didn't. No, I'm kidding.
Wait, I thought he moved Green Bay.
I don't know. He moved some. He moved multiple people.
Pretty sure it was Green Bay.
Someone from Dallas was in the Green Bay game. Whatever. You know. But no, I mean, but again, Rice had the Super Bowls. Moss never won a Super Bowl. So, but Randy Moss was maybe the second best wide receiver of that generation, and continued playing through. But Jerry Rice was the greatest wide receiver of all time. But the difference really is the Super Bowls.
Well, I think Jerry Rice also won. Did he not win the MVP award one season at least, or offensive player?
No, no receivers ever won an MVP.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But he's won Offensive Player of the Year at least once, if not twice. Like Adams and Evans, to be fair, like they're like in today's age, I think even more than the previous generations, they just do not want to give wide receivers a single trophy in this world unless they do something absolutely insane, a la Cooper Kupp.
I was going to say Cooper Kupp got it last year, right?
But that's what I'm saying. They need to have that kind of season. Devontae Adams is that caliber of player, but unless he has the Cooper Kupp season, they're not going to give it to him. Same with Mike Evans as well. So you can't I think there's a bunch of different ways to sparse between the two. I don't think, again, it's not a right or wrong. It's just who are you going with? And I think it's very clear on this show that Rick has his answer and I have mine. So we can move on to the next one if we do have one.
All right. Let's move on to some fact or fiction.
Okay.
All right. So today's fact or fiction. Doug Peterson is a top 10 coach in the NFL. Yeah. Doug Peterson actually does have the ability to do something that is very, very rare in the NFL in history. I believe only 3 coaches beforehand have done it. It's the NFL coaching triple crown, which is an NFC championship, an AFC championship, and a Super Bowl. I don't necessarily think he wins an AFC championship this year, but he is one of the very few that has the ability to do that.
You know what though? Nothing would stun me at this point with Doug Peterson.
Listen, he took a Jaguars team that was the number 1 pick last year for the 2nd year in a row, and they are a playoff team that just won their division. He has done a fantastic job there, and you might hate Trent Baalke, but I'll tell you what, he does know how to pick a coach.
Well, when you get it right the 8th time, you know.
Yeah.
3. Well, no, because he was in San Francisco before that, and he did pick Harbaugh.
And then he was the reason why Harbaugh got fired, because he made it a power struggle between the two of them.
I'm not saying he's not going to screw it up. I'm just saying he's got the ability to pick good coaches. And Doug Peterson did it in Philly. He's doing it now in Jacksonville, although, again, I don't necessarily know if this is going to be a Super Bowl Jaguars team. I wouldn't bet for it, but we said the same thing about that Eagles team. So
let's take it from this angle. I think he's the best coach of either South divisions.
That's fair.
So that eliminates 7 other teams.
Yep.
I think he's a better coach than two AFC East teams.
Rick, I was gonna. Do you just want to go division by division and let's just pick out? So let's go AFC East first. So Bills, Sean McDermott, is he a top 10 coach? Let's build our top 10 here. So Sean McDermott, boom.
Yes.
Robert Saleh?
No.
Bill Belichick?
Yes.
Begrudgingly. Mike McDaniel?
No.
No.
Get out of here with your Warby Parker wonky glasses.
So AFC East is out.
Except for McDermott, yeah.
Right.
So
McDermott's that's what I meant. So
you also said Belichick. You got half the AFC.
Yeah.
Oh, true. McDermott.
So 2 AFC East coaches there. We already said not out to the rest of the AFC South. Let's go to the AFC West. Andy Reid, top 10 coach.
Yes.
Broncos. Well, they didn't have a coach. So Josh McDaniels. Do we really nope.
Nope.
And Brandon
Staley. Nope.
And it sucks to say that, but AFC North. Mike Tomlin.
Yes.
I think we can agree. Yes. Stefanski in Cleveland. No. Zach Taylor. I would argue. I think a lot of people. I think the talent is propping him up a lot more than people realize.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. I don't think he's as good as everyone thinks that he is, but he also had a lot of terrible years in the beginning.
True.
And it wasn't for last year, he would have been fired last year.
How many second-year quarterbacks do you know have the ability to audible on 4th down in overtime? Because that's what happened last year to win, I think, 2 different games. There was that Joe Burrow had audible out of the called play so that they had a chance to convert on 4th down to go to overtime, and that's part of the reason they made the playoffs. I don't really love him as a head coach. I'm not going to argue with success. I'm not saying you should get rid of him.
I mean, I'll argue with success all the live long day.
Not my. I wouldn't in the top 10.
This is the big one. John Harbaugh. It's tough. I think I'm willing to put Harbaugh to the side for the moment, and we go through the NFC right now.
Put him to the side for the moment.
Put him to the side. So 4 definitive yes.
Yep.
John Harbaugh to the side. Let's go to the NFC. NFC South we already eliminated. So let's go to the NFC North. Dan Campbell.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Keyword there.
Yeah. Kevin O'Connell's too young.
Yeah. I mean,
great coach, but not top 10 in his first year.
Yeah, that's fine.
The end of the season really showed you something with the Vikings.
Yeah, Matt LaFleur.
No.
Yeah, he's fallen out to
No,
me.
he's fallen from grace big time.
Yeah.
Matt Eberflus, no.
Yeah.
So no one in the NFC North.
All right, so let's go to the NFC West. Kyle Shanahan.
Yes.
Of course. So that's
Yes.
5. Pete Carroll.
Yes.
6.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting
Sean
my NFC
McVay.
West. Sean McVay.
No.
I would still argue it. I would still argue. I think he's still the top.
You know, well, here's the thing. Like, he could be lower to your top 10, but he was so grossly mismatched in his first Super Bowl that, yeah, he got it back. But then there's games where I don't know what the Rams are doing offensively. I don't know. Like,
listen.
I'm questioning with that.
If you want to knock him on that Super Bowl, that's fine. But let's just say he led the NFL's top scoring offense, one of the highest scoring offense in years. And his top 2 players were Jared Goff and Todd Gurley. Belichick understood if you stop the offensive line's movement and you stop Todd Gurley, that offense does not score points. And that's what he did.
That's why Belichick's a better head coach
than anyone else.
But Rick, that's the thing. At the end of the day, to the guy who beat the only person who's beaten Sean McVay in the Super Bowl, because he's made it twice and he's 1 for 1. The only person that's done it is probably, you could argue, the greatest coach of all time. I'm not going to knock the guy for losing to the greatest of all time. So I'm keeping Sean McVay within my
Hall
top
of Famer
10.
Tom Brady.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm keeping Sean McVay in my top 10. So I have 7 coaches in my top 10.
Okay.
And
so then far, the NFC East.
Mike McCarthy, Brian Daboll.
Not for if he was, Kevin O'Connell would be, but no.
I was going to say, like, if we're not going to put O'Connell, I can't put Daboll there. Ron Rivera, no. And
Nick Sirianni,
he deserves it after this season. First seed in the NFC. They made the playoffs last year. They should have made the playoffs.
Let me just say,
I've criticized their.
I think he should be a Coach of the Year candidate.
Yeah,
but if you're going to put Sirianni there and not Daboll, I mean, look at what both teams have.
Yeah,
the Eagles are an embarrassment of riches. They had 2 All-Pro players on their line. That's not even talking about all of the excellent play that they had across their entire team.
Well, I was going to make the joke, which line, Justin, because the offensive and the defensive line are both pretty
good.
But so then my thought is that I'm thinking that based upon what we said, Doug Peterson has to be a top 10 because we named 8 coaches plus Harbaugh to be 9, and then he would be 10 if we're putting Sirianni in there. So, I mean...
Well, you have an extra spot because you're not putting McVay in there.
Well, I mean... I would have put him in the top 10 regardless. This is a renaissance job. I mean, this is a job that, we said was going to be a year away from happening. And, it literally took half a season where basically they were, 3-7, and then they won 6 of their last 7 games, basically. That's an incredible job to get that team ready. Because I'll be honest with you, any other coach in that mindset would not have fulfilled that destiny. Like, look at what Matt LaFleur did. Yeah, they got to that point, but then they lost to the Lions. You were swept by the Lions this season.
Yep.
And remember, Jerk, from our coaching carousel, where we said the last guy to get swept by the Lions didn't survive until the next season. I'm surprised LaFleur is. That just bucks with the B, Justin, tradition. But, I don't know. I mean,
How else would you spell it?
Well,
Ducks, D.
Yes, with a D. Ducky Hodges.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
With Doug Peterson, he's an interesting case because I've gone back and forth so many times with Doug Peterson. Because on one hand, he's won a Super Bowl. On the other hand, my personal credence is that I refuse to be deceived by coaches who have just won the Super Bowl in their career once. On the other hand, they did a great job in that Super Bowl to overcome the Bill Belichick defense.
How many hands do you have, Jerk?
Several. I think Doctor Strange, when he's fighting Thanos and he just has like a bunch of arms come up behind him, it's like each one has to go back to back. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, that amazing offense that he had completely fell apart when his offensive coordinator left. Now, on one hand, Carson Wentz was his quarterback. So I've gone back and forth so many times with Doug Peterson. I'm willing to give you a top 10 coach in the league to finish off this season because he got the Jacksonville Jaguars there. And also, just as a stick in the craw to happy hour last season, Urban Meyer, I'll gladly say that his replacement became a top 10 coach in the league and made the playoffs just to spite him even more. So you know what? You won me over. Doug Peterson's a top 10 coach in the league this season, for sure. For sure.
How about the fact that 2 coaches for the Jaguars that have won AFC divisions are both named Doug?
Right.
With the other one being Marone. Ugh.
By the way, speaking of that coaching triple crown, do you guys remember the answer to that? That was the first trivia question I ever asked you way back in the day when we were all working at college together.
I'm amazed.
Oh, good lord, we're going that far back.
Oh, we're going.
First question I ever asked you.
This is pre-pandemic. This is way
There
pre-pandemic.
were 3 coaches to ever win a coaching triple crown.
Coaching triple crown. So AFC, NFC championships, and a Super Bowl.
Well, Andy Reid's one, obviously.
Andy Reid is the most recent.
Yep.
Did he win? I'm questioning if he won the AFC. Was the NFC down question? Was Bill Parcells one of them?
No.
No,
Because
really?
Parcells never won a Super Bowl as a head coach.
Really? Dang,
Never.
Why did I think he won one?
Never.
Not even as a
Never did.
coordinator? Wow.
No.
I thought he won one. Dang, the big two.
Parcells
Trying to
never
think.
won as a head coach. Wasn't he the Giants head coach?
Oh yeah, he did. But that was the 80s.
Also, New England.
I was high on LSD. It was the 80s.
So is Parcells not an answer?
Well, no, he never won an AFC
I thought
championship. Did he?
He
No,
didn't
he
go to
did.
the Super Bowl with the Patriots.
Yeah, he did.
So,
I was
So
also
Parcells-
high on LSD for that one too.
so Parcells is an answer.
Yeah.
Justin,
It's been a rough couple decades, man.
Jesus,
It's
apparently-
snowing outside. I don't know.
Oh my god, is it? Not for me.
Well, you're in Connecticut, dude.
I mean, it was snowing a couple days ago when there was no
Yeah.
snow for you chaps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So.
it's
Oh.
wait. So Andy Reid, maybe Bill Parcells. Justin still hasn't confirmed or denied it.
Yeah, Bill Parcells was
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And the third one.
Is it Dan Reeves?
No, Dan Reeves is close. Dan Reeves went to 3 Super Bowls as a Broncos head coach, but did not win any of them. And then
he also went in the
coach at
Falcons.
Atlanta,
Yeah,
but
he
also
didn't win that
did
one
not
either.
win the Super Bowl. He's won
Yeah,
both championship games, but not the Super
but
Bowl.
never.
That's crazy. Wait, wasn't it? Didn't the when he made it with the Falcons? Isn't that when they lost to the Broncos? When
Yes.
Elway then finally? Wow.
Dick Vermeil, because I know he went to 2 as an NFC coach, and he won with the Rams.
Right, he won with the greatest show on turf.
I don't see anything about him going in the AFC. Though.
Okay. Am I in that? Am I in that right era?
I think so.
Who am I thinking of? Why can I not put the name to it?
Tom Landry?
That's who I was thinking.
No. Tom
Jacob
Flores?
surprised you.
It'll surprise me?
No, shouldn't.
No.
Bill Walsh.
I'm surprised at you.
Oh, wait. Oh, no, they didn't. I mean, oh, no. Because this would have been an answer. Tom Coughlin would have been an answer but Jacksonville didn't win. They went to the title game, but they didn't win the title
They
game.
win it.
Yeah. Surprised at me.
Yeah.
That doesn't really say much. Pete Carroll? No.
No, I don't think it won it.
Now I'm just naming random head coaches, basically. Jim Fossil.
Good
All
sir.
Yeah, I think I'm tapped out.
What are we doing?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of like old names here. I'm actually not that bad with older coaching names, but it's not coming to me.
Rick.
What? What did I do? What did I do?
You're missing our boy.
Weeb?
Weeb Eubank.
Oh, okay.
I would have never gotten that.
Oh,
He
Weeby.
won with the Jets, and then he went with where is it? I don't know, but Weeb Eubank was the other answer.
Okay,
I don't remember what the other team he coached.
You could have given me 15 more guesses, and I would have not have gotten that name.
Man, Weeb was a curmudgeon when he got older. I mean, he was a good guy and all, but he was a curmudgeon.
Oh God! So
No, literally, pull up a photo of like an older Weeb Eubank to
I'm
tell me
looking at
he's
him
not a
now.
curmudgeon. Yeah, tell me
So-
he's not a curmudgeon.
So that ends this week's edition of Fact or Fiction plus extra trivia there at the end
Good grief!
on that one. So we're not done with the fun yet, ladies and gentlemen, because you just learned the fact that, well, the 3 coaches that have won the coaching Triple Crown, Super Bowl, AFC, NFC Championship game. But that's not the only fun fact you're going to get on a weekly basis because good people who watch our show. We have a new segment that's going to debut on a weekly basis because, quite frankly, we need to fill time. And knowing us, this conversation, we're going to, spin into a 10-minute side convo here about whatever this fact is. It's Rick's mind-blowing fact of the week, where Rick is going to dive into the lore of the NFL. He's going to give us a fun, absolutely mind-blowing fact. It's going to be absolutely bonkers. You're going to question your sanity with some of the stuff that he's going to bring up. Probably.
I mean, I question my sanity right now. I said I was on LSD twice, whatever. That's my thing. But I also said it's NFL. Some weeks it'll be not NFL because there's just too many things going on here. Right. This is not the mind-blowing fact, but this is a did you know. Did you know, gentlemen, that Super Bowl VII was 50 years ago on this date, January 14th, 1973. It was the warmest Super Bowl on record played at the LA Coliseum. It was 84 degrees at kickoff time. But did you know that this game was the impetus for a massive rule change in the NFL that we are still living with to this day? So if you don't know about Super Bowl VII, that was the culmination of Don Shula and the Dolphins' perfect season when Miami defeated Washington 14-7 in that game. And everyone remembers one of the last scoring plays where Gary Apremian of the Dolphins botched the field goal snap, tried to throw the ball forward. It was a fumble recovery by Mike Bass of the Washington then Redskins for a touchdown. But earlier in that fourth quarter, there was a play that would absolutely change the way the game is seen nowadays. On a third down play or a second down play, Washington quarterback Billy Kilmer, having led the Redskins down the field 79 yards, went off for a throw to his then tight end, Jerry Smith, in the end zone. Smith was wide open, and the ball bounced off the crossbar, therefore ruling the pass incomplete. On the very next play, Jerry Kilmer threw an interception to Super Bowl MVP Jake Scott. But what if I told you that the Redskins could have had a gripe based upon the NFL rule change that happened the next year? See, in 1973, the goalposts were at the goal line. And in 1974, the goalposts were moved back to the end line. So the throw to Jerry Smith could have come down deeper into the end zone and could have been caught for a touchdown. However, because the goalposts were right on the goal line as they had been for the last 50 years, it was ruled incomplete. The Redskins could have had themselves a gripe there because the very next year, in a player safety initiative, the goalposts were moved from the goal line 10 yards back to the end line, where they stand to this day. Therefore, that pass from Kilmer to Smith, in all likelihood, would have been a touchdown. Could have changed the complexion of the NFL forever because the Dolphins might not have gotten their perfect season without one lucky pass off the crossbar. That is your mind-blowing fact of the week.
Wow.
I don't know what to say to that either.
Yeah.
Well, this actually brings up a correction in my previous thing because there's actually only 2 coaches that have ever done it. Weeb Eubank is actually on the list in a very confusing article with Don Shula, who won a Lombardi Trophy and an AFC Championship, but then won as an National Football League head coach before the merger.
Correct.
So technically, no, Weeb Eubank is not on that list, but Don
Parcells
Shula,
and Reed. Yeah.
It's just Parcells and Andy Reid.
Yeah. But just think about that for a second there. Think about the fact that it took them 50 years to move the goalposts to where they are now because they've realized that you could run technically into the bottom of the goalpost and get hurt. And if it had been moved back just a year, then that play would have been completely nullified by the goalposts being pushed back as far as they were. Kilmer also threw 3 interceptions that game, so maybe he was terrible. But
I was going to say.
But again, on the very next play, he threw one that was a pick to Jake Scott because he got rattled by the fact that he hit one off the crossbar when he's going for a wide open tight end.
Right.
Move those goalposts back 10 yards. That's a touchdown.
I mean, that is one of those what ifs then. What if the Dolphins never had that perfect season?
Yep. Because then it would be the Patriots that would have had the first one because you know that the the football gods would have laughed at our faces and said the Giants aren't going to win that year, as the Patriots would won the Super Bowl that year.
So via the butterfly effect in some way, shape, or form, we would have gone.
Oh yeah.
To the,
oh yeah.
So what you're saying is Brady would have 8 rings right now.
Thank
Yes.
God for goalposts.
Yeah. Thank God for goalposts.
Thank God for goalposts. Way men. So confirmed goalposts are the reason why Tom Brady and the Patriots did not finish the perfect season, ladies.
That is the confirmation. Yes.
There we go. This podcast confirming things for you, one arbitrary asinine detail at a time. Anyways, moving on from that, we've had our fun with a little bit of football sprinkled in there, allegedly. Let's move on to the next portion of the podcast, because I know I mentioned we're going to talk NFL playoffs, but of course, the regular season's over. That means people got fired. People lost their jobs. And it's always a tragic thing, but you sign up to be a professional sports league head coach. We're going to talk about you in some way, shape, or form, whether you do good, bad, or somewhere in between. If you're somewhere in between, well, you're probably not going to get talked about that much, actually, to be honest. So, NFL coaches got fired this past week. Not that many. Partially considered 2 of the coaches that we expected to get fired got fired in the middle of the season. Of course, Nathaniel Hackett a couple weeks back for the Denver Broncos. And, of course, Justin's favorite head coach, Matt Rule, was fired much earlier in the season by the Carolina Panthers. Steve Wilkes finishing things off in a pretty good manner for the Carolina Panthers as well, with them beating the Saints in the regular season finale. Now, coaches that got fired, I am doing this podcast, of course, with 2 Jets fans. So we got to start with this with the coordinator first before we get to the 2 head coaches and the general manager that are no longer in positions of power here. Mike LaFleur got fired, lads. So a Jets season that started off with promise, that at one point was looking real good. You had was going to be offensive rookie of the year in Breece Hall. Zach Wilson, at least for his first game back against the Steelers, led a 4th quarter drive. Things were looking good. You had it, 3 games above 500 record? 6-3, I think. And then it fell down. And down. And you basically tripped on yourself, fell down a bunch of stairs, and broke your back. So Mike LaFleur ends up getting fired here. The Jets in a situation where we have no idea what they're going to do with quarterback in the offseason. Now they need to get a new offensive play caller. Justin, I'm going to throw it to you first. Are you in any way surprised that Mike LaFleur got fired? And following that, what are your thoughts about what the Jets should be doing to try to replace him?
No, I'm not surprised. When it happened, I was kind of like, yeah, no, that's fair. But the more removed I get from it, the more I'm like, this has typical Jets written all over it. There's just a lot of dysfunction that will always come along, I guess, with the Jets organization. It's weird because it's a 2nd-year play caller, who again is doing his best to learn. He only had a 2nd-year quarterback who struggled. He did miss a lot of time with injury in the beginning of the season, and they were playing an ancient Joe Flacco and a ribless Mike White through the end of the season that was missing their best offensive players, including multiple starting offensive linemen and their young starting running back. And with all of that going on, he still happened to coach his rookie receiver to over 1,000 yards, which, I mean, is incredible to me. But the offense was flat. There was no life in the play calling, and I think it needed to happen. I don't necessarily know if it happens on any other team the way it's happened with the Jets, but it did. There was too many screen passes on 3rd down when you're down a touchdown. There was too many miscommunications, and it really looked like he, in his 2nd year, just kind of failed Zach Wilson, who seems to be going backwards. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to get someone in there that's going to, hold Zach Wilson accountable and try and get him going, because realistically, if they had to choose between the 2 of them, they're gonna keep the quarterback. The quarterback is more valuable than anything in the NFL, period. So I think that whether or not they are going to try and retool Zach Wilson for the offseason. And they got to get in a quarterback whisperer type offensive coordinator. And it wasn't just the coordinator. They also got rid of their offensive line coach and I believe their tight ends coach. And they are going to need a new wide receiver coach with Miles Austin likely not coming back because of the NFL suspension that is looming over him. So it's going to be a brand new offensive coaching staff this year. And as a Jets fan, let's hope they can get it right for once.
Yeah, offense. Well, offensive overall as a whole, clearly, in regards to that. Definitely something we'll probably be discussing because as the playoff rounds go, it's going to be less teams to talk about. It's going to be more room over the next couple shows that we can start to look ahead a little bit into the offseason. And that's definitely going to be a topic of discussion here on the podcast over the coming weeks and months. What are the Jets going to do at the quarterback position? For sure will be something to look at. Rick, your thoughts on Mike LaFleur? Were you ready? I mean, I know what your reaction was in that Week 18 game with the Dolphins-Jets. Were you ready to fire him before the Dolphins-Jets games and that just cemented it? Or what were your emotions throughout the season with Mike LaFleur?
Can I get a touchdown anywhere?
No.
Yeah. So then, of course, I was ready to fire him. It was stagnant. It was stale. It just didn't. It wasn't good. But here's the problem. The problem is that since the Jets went to the AFC Championship game in 2010, they have had now 8 offensive coordinators. Brian Schottenheimer, right? He was the guy that got there and lasted a couple more years. Tony Sparano wasn't really good. He was there for 1 year. Marty Mornhinweg, and I know Jets fans that are hearing this are just, prolapsing on the ground right now, hearing all these names that are there. Chan Gailey, who I said mistakenly last week I missed. I don't know why I said that, but technically he was the offensive coordinator when they won 10 games last, so maybe that's why, John Morton was there for a year. That was really good, wasn't it, guys? Jeremy Bates, that was exciting. Dowell Loggins for 2 years in the Adam Gase era, and now Mike LaFleur. So can anybody out here play this game, as Vince Lombardi would say? Can anybody out here coordinate the offense here? It does all start with the quarterback, but the problem is if you try and get the quarterback first, depending on the quarterback you have to get somebody who's malleable to that offensive scheme, which is why all the talk and all the bluster about the Jets going after Aaron Rodgers is ridiculous to me, because that would mean he's going to get whatever guy he wants in there, which is probably going to be Nathaniel Hackett, and God help our souls if that happens. I don't want it either. But there are some names out there that are also up for consideration that I'm not excited about. Mike McCoy doesn't excite me. He's the Jags QB coach. He had a good year this year, but not that excited by him. Darrell Bevel doesn't excite me. I mean, he's the Dolphins' O coordinator, but I'm not that thrilled by him. The problem is, what?
He's a QB coach there, right?
QB coach, yeah. The problem is, and I hate to bring this part up, but it's the truth in statement. This Jets team lost a considerable amount of their offensive luster and output when Greg Knapp passed away in 2021. He was going to be the passing game specialist. He was a guy that won Super Bowl 50 with the Broncos. He was a guy that knew how to take quarterbacks and knew how to change everything. And they hired him in 2021 in January, and in July he was struck by a passing motorist and died, unfortunately. And, it's a pain that I'm sure that family still lives with. And the Jets, from a football standpoint, they needed a senior leader like that in their offensive locker room, because he was going to be the guy to shepherd Zach Wilson into, whatever he could have been. He could have been the next Steve Young or Ty Detmer, basically, if Greg Knapp was there. And that might be an overreach, but you never know. So for the Jets offense, you just need consistency. You need somebody who's going to be able to stay there for more than 2 years to build up a good coordinating system that will work in this mindset. And I don't know who it's going to be. I truly don't know. It's gonna be somebody terrible, probably, because that's how Woody Johnson operates. And it's going to be a matter of, trying and hoping for the best and praying. But don't know who the quarterback is. Don't know who the coordinator is. If I'm Bam Knight and Breece Hall, there's no direction. I'm scared. I'm not really scared. I'm more like anxiously waiting to try and figure out who's going to call the plays and who's going to hand me the ball. Because you can't have a robot do it. So who's going to hand me the ball to try and win these games? And I don't know. I mean, here's my question. Would Marty, the Stop and Shop cleaning robot, be a better quarterback than Zach Wilson? Absolutely, yes. He moves as slow as hell, but you can't tackle him. So maybe he'd be better. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I have no expectations for this job. I don't.
Would you just blow the play dead if you had a robot back there and he just got tackled?
Sure, yeah. Absolutely. Why not?
Look, Zach's got a lot of the physical tools, but at one point you have to think that the coaching staff failed him, and it could be a mental thing for him that he's not going to be able to get past whether or not he was going to be on the Jets. It could have just been a processing thing, but there's something that clearly the Jets coaches could not get through to him with. I mean, the the having Greg Knapp there might have made a difference, but it's rare that you see quarterbacks just completely falter and get worse throughout the season. And that's what happened with Zach Wilson this year. Like maybe he got booed a little early, and it's hard to play in New York. But there were plenty of games where you're like, all right, well, what did the play calling do to help him? I mean, remember that Jacksonville game, a game they absolutely needed at home. The third play of the game, Quinnen Williams, who's having an all-pro season, gets up and he sacks Trevor Lawrence, and he comes up with the ball, and the first play they run from their own 15-yard line is a designed QB sneak up the middle. That is almost Joe Judge running a designed QB sneak from their own 20. I mean, I don't understand how you're trying to get your offense going when you're calling plays like that. I mean, how is Breece Hall ending the season as your leading rusher? He missed the last 10 games.
Yeah.
I don't care how many offensive linemen go down. And I understand you had a committee and the whole thing. Breece Hall didn't break 500 yards. He had a great first few games. How is Breece Hall still your leading rusher?
Yeah.
They needed to scheme better. They needed to make a halftime adjustment offensively through the season, and they didn't. And teams saw that, and they took advantage, of what they already knew. And when that happens, no matter how much talent you have on your team, the blame's going to get put on the coordinator. It just is.
I think a lot of that, too, is also the fact that I think was it the same game or the next game that Vera Tucker got hurt and missed the season, because that was a big piece. You have these young offensive linemen, Becton and Vera Tucker, who can't stay on the field. And as good as Bam Knight was, and look, Bam Knight was a very good undrafted free agent signing. He was a good player for what he was. But you're right. For the amount of games that I expected him to play, and also, where the hell did James Robinson go? I think he got hurt too, right? Potentially.
No, he was a healthy scratch a lot of the games.
Yeah, so you traded for him. So what did they do? Trade a draft pick for James Robinson? That worked out real well, didn't it?
It becomes it was conditional. So if he got a certain amount of yards, they would have get, but it was like a 6th to a 5th, so it wasn't like a huge price tag. And to get into the playoffs, you had to win 4 of your last 8 games, and they went 1-7.
Yeah.
So I understand the back half of their schedule ended up being harder than everyone expected, because a lot of those teams were a lot better than everyone expected. There was kind of a flip in the parity in the NFL this year, in which teams like the Seahawks and the Lions were much more threatening than teams like Green Bay and Baltimore and the Steelers and all that stuff. But you have to come up with something at home. I mean, that Jacksonville game is Jacksonville said, all right, all we have to do is play simple football and not make a mistake. The Jets, they're not going to get that many sacks. They get a couple, but they're not going to get that many sacks. If we don't make mistakes, the Jets can't capitalize on defense. And if they are in poor field position, they can't move the ball. Yeah. They are out of their young running back. They have no one to throw to their young receivers. What are they going to do?
And also in the most Jetsian move you could possibly ever have, after the one good throw that Zach Wilson has in the second half, they decide, okay, now is the time. I love him. I think he's a good quarterback, but now is the time you bring in Chris Trevler.
I mean,
it always goes back to Chris Trevler for Rick.
Listen, he was a good change of pace back. He should have been the backup quarterback in Week 18, not Zach, because you already said go read a book or go take time for yourself.
And didn't handle him well either. The one when they were finally ready for him to get a get right game, and they were playing the worst team in the league, as per the final standings, they put in Mike White. It was like, I understand that if you're going to sit Zach, you sit him for that New England game. You don't sit him for the Bears game.
Right.
It made no sense.
Which again is another issue of offensive coordinating, play calling, head coaching. And
it's the dysfunction of a Jets team.
Like I go in the next season with Robert Saleh on our head coach meter as like a 4 in the hot seat, because just the way, look, the first season was bad, but it had some improvement. This season, the improvement was there, but it fell off at the end, and that's disastrous. You can't have that.
When you have a draft the way you did, and you have players perform the way they did, including a defense. Let me tell you, of the top 10 defenses in points allowed, do you know how many didn't make the playoffs?
I'm going to say 1, just the Jets.
I'm going to look it up right now. I think it was 2.
Oh, okay.
The Jets were 4th in points allowed.
Yeah.
And they didn't make the playoffs. And I think
the Broncos were the Broncos the other one.
I was say the Broncos probably the other
one. In points allowed. Okay. The Jets were 4th. The Broncos actually did not finish top 10 in points allowed.
Interesting.
I blame Brett Rippon in that 51-point game for the Rams at the end of the season.
It's the Commanders.
Right. In the top 7 teams,
there
were 2 teams that did not make the playoffs in points allowed. One of them was the Jets. In the top 5, they're the only team to have a negative point differential, and they were negative 20.
Yep.
The other team was Rick's Washington Commanders at 7. Oh, I'm sorry, at 6.
8-1, baby. Woohoo!
No, at 7.
Keeps the job
in the top 8. Every single other top defense in the league, besides the Ravens, had a plus minus over 50. In fact, the next best point plus minus after the Ravens were plus 35 was the Cincinnati Bengals at plus 96. The rest of them are all over 100.
Again, it just adds more credence to the whole thing. When you have a good defense, the offense has to be good in turn, because a defense can only be so good for so long. And look, look at 2 of those last 3 games the Jets had this year. Yeah, the Jacksonville game was in a monsoon, so not a lot of points were going to be scored there. You knew that going in. Miami started Skylar Thompson in week 18, so you knew you weren't going to get a lot of points from their offense going in. And, it ended 11-6. It ended up like a baseball score. Sorry, but like that's not good enough. It's just not good enough. And when you have the offensive rookie of the year in Garrett Wilson, it's just not good enough. It isn't. So, but that's the thing. I have no confidence in who's going to take over next. I really don't. Not unless they come in and, guns blazing. So my fear is Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh no.
That's my fear. No. That's my ultimate fear, is that he's going to be, but he's a name because he runs that air raid style offense. Like the late Mike Leach did, because he learned from that, and Kyler Murray was in that air raid style offense, and so that's the way it goes now. Is that if you've got a quarterback who can go guns a blazing, but is that the answer? It's not. I don't want Cliff Kingsbury anywhere near my team or anywhere near my state. Thank you very much.
Clearly, especially, you guys. I don't know, Rick. You guys Justin mentioned how the Jets finished 1-7 in their last 8 games.
It sounds like a Kingsbury job.
That's music to Cliff Kingsbury ears. I think he might come a knocking on that offensive coordinator position.
The other big offensive juggernaut that you hear, Frank Reich.
Him coming back. It would make sense. I think he does need to go back as an OC before he tries to interview as a head coach again. And the Jet, to be fair, as an offensive coordinator under Doug Peterson, he won. It was his play calling that helped the Eagles win the Super Bowl.
Under him, Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate.
Exactly.
And listen, before the last 4 games of the season, they were talking about Carson Wentz being the comeback player of the year in the NFL before he lost several games.
And then they remember that it's a 18-week season, not a 14-week season. So, then it all fell to pieces.
Actually, Frank Reich may not be a bad
statistic season. And if the Jets scored 20 points a game this year, which is still bottom half of the league, they make the playoffs. Yeah. They win 4 of those last 8 games?
Yep.
Yeah. Broncos and Jets. Who would have thought barely 3 touchdowns a game could actually help you out?
Right.
Yeah. Awful. So it'll be interesting to see over the coming weeks and months what's going to happen with the Jets in particular there. Of course, it is a vested interest in this podcast because, my compatriots here are Jets fans. But we are going to move on. Rick mentioned a name there that we're going to get to here because I'm going to reverse the order we were going to go in because I actually want to save one of these guys, this last guy for last, the best for last, I'll say, in terms of head coaches that we love on this show. Cliff Kingsbury was fired from the Arizona Cardinals. and Steve Keim, the general manager, stepped away due to health concerns and health reasons. Presently, according from everything I'm seeing and reading, it'll be a combined effort between Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson, who are both one is player personnel, one is pro personnel. Both are VPs of those respective positions. They're going to be, joining forces to be the brain trust for decisions in the offseason until they decide to name a new general manager, which, considering the history of this organization, considering the fact that Steve Keim built his way up, probably is going to end up being one of those two guys. If not, they're going to share the roles in some way, shape, or form. But moving on from that, they'll figure out the general manager thing eventually, we assume. Cardinals, what was a magical season last year, an amazing start to the year. What was it, like a 10-2 start that they had to last season? Everything looked all right in the world. And they lost, and they lost, and they lost, and they got smacked by the Rams en route to the Rams Super Bowl run in the wild card weekend last year. And now this season, we have a decent start to them, or a 2-3 or 3-2. That's not the worst in the world. That's passable, that's manageable. And they finish with the 4th overall pick this season, or 3rd overall pick. They finished with the top 5 pick in the upcoming draft, and they had a terrible end to this season, to say the very least. Some people on this show, let me not say some, everyone on the show predicted it. We knew it was coming from a mile away, except for Rick in the preseason, because he had the Cardinals winning the West. But irregardless of that, as the season actually played out, Rick then changed course and said, you know what? Cliff Kingsbury ain't long.
That was my one bold pick for them. I said, even though they finished 12-5, they're still firing everybody. And they fired everybody. Yeah, they finished 4-13, but they fired everybody. I was right.
You were right.
I was half right. I get half credit.
Yes, and for that half credit, you get a Cole Strange jersey. Now, irregardless, let's go. Cliff Kingsbury got fired. Rick, your thoughts on the absolute travesty, really a Shakespearean type finish to the Cardinals, because it all seemed like things were kind of heading in the right direction. Kingsbury, and Kyler all got contract extensions in the offseason. And we said it on the show, if any two of those guys are going to be gone and one is left standing after the end of a bad season or two, it was going to be the quarterback. And lo and behold, the quarterback is, he's not standing. He's in a hospital bed because he had to get surgery on his torn ACL. So
he will be standing eventually, yes.
Eventually. But technically, as of now, no one is left standing, although one of them is still with the organization. But my little, wordplay aside, Kingsbury fired, your reaction to that, and what direction the Cardinals have to go in to right the ship for their team.
I mean, elation in Phoenix. You have to be absolutely elated and overjoyed that this happened, because this was clearly not the answer to anything. And it goes to show you that karma can be, just hilarious. When you get rid of Steve Wilkes after one season, it was a bad year, sure, but that wasn't really his fault. You had Josh Rosen, who was a con artist at a quarterback. You had that going for you. And then Kingsbury comes in here and he does a job that could have been good, but his track record was not very good. And so, and Wilkes could be the Carolina head coach by the end of the week or by the end of the month. Who knows? It never didn't work. It just didn't work out. This year, it was just magnified by the suspensions, the injuries, the lack of direction, all of these things. And, the question then becomes, twofold. One, where does Cliff Kingsbury go from here? And he will be a head coach somewhere, or an offensive coordinator somewhere. Head coach probably in the college ranks if he wants to go back there, but an O coordinator in the NFL for sure. So does he deserve it? No, I think he's terrible, but that's just my personal opinion on the matter. But then if you're Arizona, like you said, what is the option from here? And I know we have friends over at Caesars that did all of our lines. There's another sports book who I won't name on this podcast for fear of losing Caesars, not actually a sponsorship. But they have listed the top 4 odds for Arizona's head coach. Brian Flores is number 4. D'Amico Ryans is number 3. Vance Joseph, the current D coordinator, is number 2. And Sean Payton is number 1. If I'm Sean Payton, I don't think I want this job. I don't think I do, because, you got Kyler Murray and you got good wide receivers, but, can you trust that Kyler Murray is going to stay healthy enough? I don't know. If I'm the Cardinals, do I want Vance Joseph to be my head coach? Because he was just on the staff that went 4-13, and they lost all those guys on defense. No J.J. Watt again, because he's gone. He retired. So you're starting up with trying to find the heart and soul of this defense that injured a lot. I don't know. This is an interesting test case. It's an interesting test case because the division is still very much up in the air. No matter what the results were, like Seattle caught lightning in a bottle with Geno Smith and made the playoffs, which is just a testament to Pete Carroll. And San Francisco, somehow they're a great team, but they can't solve the quarterback position. Brock Purdy could be the answer, but if Mr. Irrelevant goes to win the Super Bowl, you got a Jimmy G problem and you got a Trey Lance problem coming in. So, there's a lot of different, toss-ups over there too. And the Rams, they sold their soul for one Super Bowl, and they're paying the piper now to get those benefits back. So the Cardinals could be in a spot here that they could make something interesting, but I don't know. There's a lot of pieces that are there. There's a lot of possibilities. But I don't know what coach in their right mind, unless it's a first-year head coach or Vance Joseph maybe, would want to take that job. Certainly, I don't think Sean Payton would want that job. I know he's the betting favorite, but certainly I don't think he would be a good fit for that role. Because again, that means that you're giving up the number 4 pick to the Saints. So you're giving up somebody. I think it's a possibility. I think the Saints could want, if it was somebody
the
else.
Saints want a first round pick, but if the Cardinals come around and say we'll give you a 2, or we'll give you
but I don't know because the way things are shaking out, you could possibly get an O lineman if you're the Saints to shore up that Trevor Penning on one side, Peter Skoronski on the other. That's a pretty terrifying O line of youth.
Of course, ideally, but I don't know a single team that's going to give up a top 5 pick for a coach. And if you are that team, don't, because that's dumb.
But the Cardinals also don't have a GM, so right now it's the player personnel and the backroom finance guy who are the GMs of this team, basically.
I know.
I don't think Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson are going to be dumb enough to trade a top 5 pick for Sean Payton.
But that's what I'm saying, is that he's the trendy hire, but you got to remember you're paying the Saints something, capital of some kind, and then Sean Payton's a guy who could command $20 million a year as a head coach on the most extreme example. If you're the Cardinals, do you really want to go that route? I don't think it's the right call to make. I don't.
Well, my only thing that I would say is the last coach that retired and then took a year off. Well, I guess he didn't technically retire. But took a year off and then came back and was the highly touted offensive head coach that had come off a Super Bowl win a few years before, was Mike McCarthy. And he's doing all right in Dallas, but he's not what people expect him to be. Now, Sean Payton, I would give a lot more credit to, but I want to talk about the Kingsbury situation, because I do think that at a lot of points it was a little unfair. They did have the tough part of their schedule in the beginning, playing the Chiefs and the Rams and all these teams that were, still healthy and playing well. And they were missing their top offensive player in DeAndre Hopkins. And now all of a sudden you have a team that was a top offense last year, missing their best player, not scoring as many points. Then all of a sudden you have this slow start stigma that you can't get past. And not to mention you have the worst defense in the NFL, or the second worst defense, at least in points allowed. So all of a sudden there's the catalyst, and maybe they needed something fresh in there. I get it. I'm not sitting here saying that Cliff Kingsbury definitely should have kept his job, but a year ago we were talking about him being coach of the year. They started off with 9 straight wins. This year, because of their slow start and missing some players, and they traded their first round pick for Hollywood Brown, who missed half the season. They had DeAndre Hopkins, who was out for 6 games and also starts to get injured. They lost their offensive line, a couple starters for a couple games. James Conner is never healthy for a full season. There's a lot of different things that led his bread and butter, his offense, to not be what it could have been this year. And, it cost him his job. It's a very quick turnaround in the NFL. And Zach Ertz too, by the way. He was also an injury for them. So whoever does take that offense, assuming they don't trade DeAndre Hopkins, which apparently is now a thing, it's got to be an attractive job. There's nothing on defense, especially if J.J. Watt retires. They have like a couple of good young players, but results are results, and their results were putrid. So they need to start, getting some defensive players in there. And whoever gets that head coach, if you're an offensive guy like Sean Payton, who happens to do well with young shorter quarterbacks who like to throw the ball deep and can move a little bit. It's a pretty attractive job.
Fair. Yeah, I'm with you guys. So I've said my piece on Cliff Kingsbury in the past on this show. Circumstances included, it became very obvious that it was Kyler Murray or bust with that team. His set plays were not working. And you mentioned the play earlier that Joe Burrow, being a second-year QB, calling audibles on fourth down plays to win games. That was basically Kyler Murray this entire season after the first quarter because they would let the set plays go.
Winning games, though.
But winning games or not, what I'm saying is that it was still giving them a better chance than what he was calling. At the end of the day, it was clear that Cliff Kingsbury's offensive play calling was just not fit in the NFL. And we saw after Kyler got hurt, like that team was nothing. That like David Blau, Colt McCoy,
could have been a case. Could have been a case of talent.
Who's the last? Trace McSorley. Like at the end of the day, it was very clear. It had to be Kyler Murray running the offense to make a Cliff Kingsbury offense look any kind of good. So I wasn't. My only thing that would have kept me from firing him is with Kyler being like tearing his ACL. Yes, I know ACL injuries, like guys are recovering from those fast. But if by chance he was going to miss the start next season, do you try to give an offseason to give a mend to the whole situation? That would have been the only thing that I thought could have saved his job. But clearly the organization wasn't going to take that chance. And they thought, all right, you know what? It's time to go. So I'm with you guys. I think whoever is going to take over the reins as the head coach, it's going to certainly be interesting. I think it has to be a head coach that I don't want to necessarily call him a taskmaster, but has to be someone that's willing to take guys to task here, especially like if the constant rumors and stuff that I'm saying, like unnamed Cardinals players are starting to say that Kyler Murray hasn't necessarily been the best guy in terms of being committed to the playbook and everything. I think you need a coach that's going to be able to hold him accountable. And that brings up the question of then how many guys can really do that? And, you know, what is the situation going to be like if there is another quarterback coach disagreement per se? It was clear as day that the Kyler Cliff Kingsbury relationship cracked and fractured this year. So what is the situation going to be like? Like this, does maybe Kyler need a guy to hold him more accountable? Is that maybe the key to all this? And for all that we're hearing about him allegedly from guys like Patrick Peterson and other unnamed Cardinals teammates, is it maybe you need the guy that you think maybe wouldn't mesh with Kyler together? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is here. Do the Cardinals know what the right answer is? Maybe not.
You know what the problem is, though, Jerk, with that? If you bring on somebody who's a taskmaster who's going to try and get Kyler Murray to be, you know, a much better, more focused mindset, there's a little loophole here because Kyler Murray technically is also owned by the Oakland A's because they drafted him like 8th in the 2018 draft or whatever it was, and they retain his rights. So if he says, you know what, I don't want to play football anymore, I'm done here, he leaves, he goes to Oakland and plays baseball. And then Arizona, you brought in a brand new head coach that's going to be this gung-ho guy, and who's your quarterback? So it's a very delicate line you gotta walk along with Kyler Murray, because if you anger him and he leaves and he goes and does something else, then you've got Trace McSorley back there, and yay!
I mean, but at the same time, can Kyler really just up and go and play baseball? Like, you're walking away from a $140 million contract you just got. You're not going to get $140 million from the A's right away.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't his contract more than like the entire A's salary hit?
I would think so. But
because they were trying to offer him, what was it, $7 million to come play baseball and not go into the NFL?
Well, he was drafted and he did agree to their $4.65 million signing bonus. So technically, he is under contract with the A's as well. So basically, he's got a terrible sports outlook, either a terrible NFL team or an even worse MLB team.
Yeah,
I don't know. Go play soccer, maybe. See what happens over there. I don't know.
Hey, Kyler Murray in the MLS, I actually want to see that.
Yeah, why not? Just don't throw the ball because it's a red card.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, maybe he'll replace Gio Reyna or whoever. Okay, moving on from that. But yes, what are the Cardinals going to do? It's going to be interesting to see. Now, the last coach we're going to talk about that got fired. We brought this guy up earlier in the season as someone who was on the hot seat meter. Rick convinced me to bring him down because he should have been a guy that got more than 1 year. But clearly, the organization was not for that. They said, you know what we want to do? We want to search for a head coach for the third or fourth straight offseason in a row now that they're doing it. The Houston Texans fired Lovie Smith, ladies and gentlemen, after Week 18 in what was a inglorious victory for the Houston Texans as they defeated the Indianapolis Colts on a very gutsy 4th and 15, 20, whatever it was call, scoring a touchdown.
Best throw of Jeff Driscoll's career.
Getting the 2-point conversion. Not only did they win the game, not only did they cost themselves the first overall pick, giving it to the Chicago Bears, not only did that give the Colts an extra win to get the Colts the 4th overall pick, so it forces the Colts to have to trade up if they want a quarterback, but it also costs somebody here some points. Rick, I throw it to you. Please.
No. Don't throw this one to me.
No,
Don't throw this one to me. I want to hear.
I want you to announce the
I want
result.
to hear Justin's go off. Have this be Justin's rant of the week right now. I want to hear Justin go off about this. Because, yes, look, did I say Lovie Smith shouldn't be fired? Absolutely. And the Texans are a terrible organization.
Of course.
But I want to hear this from the mouth of Justin Zucker first because I'm entertained by this.
We'll talk about the Texans and who they are probably going to hire as head coach in a little bit here. Justin, Lovie Smith, as Vince McMahon once said, Brett screwed Brett. We would say Lovie Smith screwed Justin Zucker. Your thoughts on what happened this past Sunday?
The Houston Texans are a terrible organization. They hosted a meeting the week before their last game to discuss their future with the head coach. And as a result, Lovie Smith screwed the Houston Texans and Justin Zucker out of what was their fate this week. Okay? That is 5 points and the first ever called tie in Sports Agents of Chaos history. The number 1 overall pick in arguably the strongest quarterback draft we've seen in 5 years. The Houston Texans are Lovie Smith deserved to get fired. Okay. 2 wins, and you're gonna win. You're gonna win this way, and just completely take the air out of my pick challenge winning season. I had it in the bag. I called a tie. That game was a tie. If any game ever should have ever been a tie. Instead, you just completely ignore our podcast and do this to me. And it cost me the season. What was I down, Rick? How many points would I have needed to get back?
Well, other results notwithstanding, that tie would have put you within striking range of, and actually, I don't know for a fact, but you then had the tiebreaker, so you might have been a point away, or you might have been tied if the Texans and Colts had tied up that game. So it was close. I'll give it to you. It was close. But the loss of the tie cost you big time.
Lovie Smith cost me a Tampa Bay Lightning puck flip for this year's trophy. And I will never forgive them. Ever. I wish the Houston Texans take a kicker with the number 2 overall pick and he tears his ACL. Okay? I hope that organization never has any success ever again. And I don't wish injury upon anyone. That's kind of a lot.
I was going to say,
on the kicker, no less.
I know. I'm surprised Jerk is still talking to me.
No, I wanted to remove you from the stream.
Yeah. No, I just no more success. And if they stay as the number 2 pick for the rest of eternity because they don't deserve to get the best player in the draft, I'll be happy. It still won't be enough.
Yeah, I was going to say
there's only one ever first trophy.
They might stay as the number 2 overall pick for eternity, considering how they're drafting.
It's true.
Considering how they're hiring head coaches.
Yeah, that too. So they fired Bill O'Brien a few years ago, rightfully so, because he was a stooge. They fired David Culley after 1 year, which was clearly obvious. Yep. And then they were definitely going to hire Josh McCown last year, but then Brian Flores dropped his lawsuit, and then they're like, let's not. So they just randomly hired Lovie Smith, which to this day, even this show is confused about. And then they fired Lovie Smith. Boys, I've quoted the Mad Titan many times, and I will do it once again. Destiny arrives all the same. The Houston Texans are going to be hiring Josh McCown this offseason. I don't think there needs to be much conversation about it. I'm convinced of it, and I won't be convinced until I see otherwise. They've interviewed him 3 times over the last 2 seasons. They fired several head coaches for it. I don't think this organization has any sort of pulse in terms of what good PR and what good decision making is. They've been dead set on this for years, and it's an old man, a very stuck in his ways old man leading the charge. The Texans are going to hire Josh McCown, further, putting the knife in the back of Justin as to why he lost and made me the first ever Sports Aces of Chaos regular season pick challenge champion. So that, I thank you, Houston. Everything else, your franchise is just awful. Lovie Smith, yeah, you'll forever have a special place in my heart. So thank you, Lovie.
Look, I mean, yeah, obviously the direction they wanted to go in was Josh McCown. I think that's the obvious one. But let me spin this from the opposite side. Now that there's been 2 seasons of futility and awful football in Houston, why would Josh McCown want to go there and be their head coach? Like, if I'm Josh McCown, I'm like, yeah, okay, you're doing all this for me. That's great. But you've won 7 games over the last 2 years. Should have been 6, but 7 games over the last 2 years. Do I really want to do that? There's a name being floated around here, which is, interesting to me. And it would be a guy that I think we're not really thinking about, but it would be kind of in that mold and mindset of that the Texans don't know what the heck they're doing. They've requested to interview Thomas Brown, who is the tight end coach for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I'm going to pull the curtain back a little bit. Maybe this satisfies the Rooney Rule because Thomas Brown is an African-American coach in the NFL, and they're interviewing D'Amico Ryans as well and Ben Johnson. So maybe it's satisfying the Rooney Rule here, but Nick Caserio has no idea what the hell he's doing. Cal McNair is a waste of space, and this Texans team just has no clue. Now, what I will say, in one positive way, I don't believe the Texans are going to lose out on their quarterback of choice, because if they wanted CJ Stroud, unless the Bears trade with somebody who wants Stroud, that's fine. But then the Texans will have Bryce Young or Will Levis. So they will have their choice of quarterback no matter what. Not to mention they'll have the 12th overall pick too. So they're going to, because that's Cleveland's pick. So they're going to have the opportunity to add a wide receiver as well in this draft, which they should have done last year. But Derek Stingley was very good. Let's just call it what it is here. But to Justin's point, absolutely. I wish nothing but the most ill of football repute on the Houston Texans. The fact of the matter is this is the team that won an AFC playoff game with TJ Yates as their quarterback. That's ignoble in of itself. And this, if it comes down to this where they hire another head coach and they fire him after 1 season again, like they did with David Culley, like they did with Lovie Smith, at some point, you have to really question whether or not this Houston team deserves to even have a football franchise at this point. Like, it's stupid.
From like a really well organization that was like on the rise. It was a really well-run organization to all of a sudden it's just like a dumpster fire that you keep thinking is going to go out. And then, like, you look in and it, like, blows smoke in your face, and all of a sudden it's raging as big as it's ever been. It's just, I don't understand what they're doing. I mean, for them to also think that they're satisfying the Rooney Rule by hiring, 2 black head coaches in a row, and then they're just going to fire them after 1 year and go right to a guy like Josh McCown with no coaching experience is also just in horrible taste. There's no real clear direction in which they're going. Their best players are asking to get traded off. They have very, very little depth. The coaching is a mess.
Yep.
And you have to blame the GM at this point because of all of the dysfunction that they're allowing to go on in their organization. It seems like to me the best thing that they could do now would be a clean sweep. But with ownership allowing things to go on the way they are, I don't. The best thing they did in the last 3 seasons that I could think of is they allowed Mark Ingram to choose to be traded to the Saints so he could, finish out over there.
Yeah.
Other than that, football-wise, they've done nothing.
Yeah.
Their players don't like them. They had Hall of Fame players and Pro Bowl players that have spurned them now on several occasions.
Yeah, and normally that it takes a generation between that happening. Like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson both retiring at the peak of their powers to the Detroit Lions years apart. This is within a span of basically the same season where you had one dummy trade DeAndre Hopkins, and then because of everything that happens, yes, that guy gets fired, but then JJ Watt's like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Even that's like a different level of dysfunction. Like they still were like, look, the system is so dysfunctional. We're never going to win a championship. I'm putting my body through a lot of stuff, but I'm a Lion. I want to be a Lion. I don't want to play for anyone else. I'm going to retire. This organization was so bad. They didn't want to be Texans.
Yeah.
Okay. And look, for whatever Bill O'Brien was, I think he was put in a position he shouldn't have been. I know that it was a health issue and they needed someone to take over last minute and he was GM and it started off okay. So they let him keep it and it kind of just tumbled into something that he should not have been doing. And then since then, it has just been nothing but horrid play. They traded Hopkins for almost nothing.
For nothing. Let's be real here. It was for nothing.
Yep. David Johnson had a decent year that year.
For nothing.
They traded J.J. Watt, arguably the player most associated with the Houston Texans.
I thought they cut him. Did they trade him?
J.J.?
I thought they had cut him straight up. I thought they granted him his release.
Maybe it was a granted release so he could look for something else. So he got nothing for J.J. Watt?
Basically.
Yeah.
Even better. I mean, when you think Houston Texans, the one player that comes to mind, I have Andre Johnson and I have J.J. Watt. And Andre Johnson, as good as he was, not J.J. Watt.
And here's the thing, too, with this as well. This owner is now going to have a direct hands-on approach to hiring the new head coach.
That always works.
Oh, it's great. It's great. And in very poor taste, he said this on a Houston radio show this year. Actually, this week, he said, I'm going to be in charge, directly involved. So it's almost like we can't go one and done this year.
Oh boy. Okay, just so we can move things along here. My last point that I want to make regarding this is
dysfunction for hours.
I mean, we really could. But the last point I want to make about this, and this is why, again, I will believe it when I see it. Like, I am convinced they're going to hire Josh McCown for one reason, as well aside from the other reasons we talked about here, for one other reason. But it doesn't have to do with the Texans. Do you know who it has to do with here, boys?
Colts.
Yep. Jim Irsay set the precedent of hiring someone with absolutely zero NFL coaching experience because he's your buddy. The McNair family, Cal in particular, this Texans organization, they have spoken to Josh McCown several times over the last few seasons. Cal McNair has been enamored with this guy. I think they would have hired him last year if it weren't for the Brian Flores lawsuit. And I don't think Cal McNair cares about optics, clearly at this point, considering all the decisions that have been made. Until I see otherwise, I'm convinced that they're going to hire Josh McCown to be the head coach. And then, like you guys have said, may nothing good come up to that organization, to that owner specifically as a whole. For the players, I do not wish any ill will. But for that man in particular, Cal McNair, don't care. Don't care. Don't hope he has any success at all. And Houston, what has been historically, they try to be a proud football city. They try to be a proud football town. The fan base is passionate for football. I'm honestly willing to say that they're probably going to lose a generation worth of football fans over this, because you got a basketball team that's trying to build something there that's at least had success in the past in the Rockets, and you have a baseball team that's been the best team in all of baseball over the last 6 seasons. There's no reason for me to want to willingly be a Houston Texans fan with the stuff this organization pulls, and the death nail will be Josh McCown being hired as the head coach. And they have paved the way for that themselves. And once again, Jim Irsay, maybe this was all a galaxy brain plan to screw the Houston Texans over. Maybe that's what it was by Jim Irsay hiring Jeff Saturday. I'd be giving him a little bit too much credit. But all in all, the Texans, barring something unforeseen, Josh McCown is probably going to be their head coach next season, which what a dumpster fire that is going to end up being, to say the very least. And that's about as much time as I want to give to them from this point longer. until we do get the official hiring news, which will probably be the next time that we end up talking about hiring once all of them get made. To the extent we have, it's the Broncos, the Panthers, the Colts, the Cardinals, and the Texans now are 5 teams that are going to be looking for new head coaches this offseason. I think I've hit them all, if I'm not mistaken. We're definitely going to mention it if someone gets hired. We'll talk a little bit about, but we'll give a full breakdown, probably like a little order for ourselves in the offseason once we get those new head coaches and so a new GM for the Cardinals. Texans should probably be getting a new GM, but knowing them, they would screw that up themselves. Cal McNair will make himself the GM, most likely. So,
good Lord.
Yeah. So moving on from that dysfunction, let's get to something we've all been waiting to talk about here. The NFL wildcard round. The NFL playoffs have begun, ladies and gentlemen, for this season that has concluded. And we got 6 games to tonight. The first one in about like a little over 2 hours from now, near 2.5 hours. Another game tonight on NBC. 3 games tomorrow, 1 o'clock, 4:30, and 8:15. And of course, we have the Monday night game. That'll certainly be interesting to say the least. It's going to be an interesting wildcard weekend in some instances. There are a couple games here that are projected to be blowouts, as our friends at Caesar Sportsbook have noted that we have, let me count it properly, we have 3 games that are favored by, where teams are favored to win by a touchdown or more. And the other 3 games combined, if I look at their lines, 3, 2.5, so that's 5.5, 1.5. So that's my side of mathematics, 7. So three games that are favored by over a touchdown, where the other 3 games combined are favored by a touchdown total. So that'll be interesting to say the least. Let's break this down one at a time. Let's start with the games today. We go to Sunday real quick, then we go to Monday. This first game, I think we could kind of go fast with. I would assume so. The San Francisco 49ers versus the Seattle Seahawks. It is going to be San Francisco being the home team. Of course, big clock, Brock, and this 49ers team are looking to continue some success here recently and get past the Seattle Seahawks in this wild card round. Seattle, scrappy team. They make it here to the wild card in part because the Packers just could not seal the deal. Future Seahawks Ring of Honor member Geno Smith, 4,000 over 4,200 passing yards on the season with 30 touchdowns. DK Metcalf over 1K yards. Kenneth Walker over 1,000 rushing yards. Pete Carroll, great season for himself, leading this team into the playoffs. But the San Francisco 49ers are a pretty good team here, to say the very least, being the second seed, being 13-4. We can try to wax a little bit poetic. I could try to wax poetic about some stuff with the Seahawks, but let's be real here, boys. It's probably going to be a San Francisco 49ers win.
Yeah, I mean, there's no real reason to discuss it any further than that. I mean, even if Brock Purdy has an off game, which he hasn't really had an off game as of yet, to my knowledge, the fact of the matter is the Niners are just a more complete team, and they're getting healthy at the right time because Deebo Samuel's now back. Elijah Mitchell is back as well for them. And look, the only upside the Seahawks could possibly have in this game is that they played this team twice this season. So 3rd time around, it's generally hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. So maybe that could play in the Seahawks' favor. I could see this game being a close affair in the first quarter, but San Francisco's got this one, I think, in the bag for me. Like, there's a reason why it's double-digit point favor.
Also worth noting, Christian McCaffrey in the 11 games with the 49ers, 10 touchdowns, 6 on the ground, 4 in the air. Dude's been a beast for San Fran ever since he got there. So, yeah. As if they didn't have enough weapons, that guy.
Yep. He's there.
Justin, any 2 cents to add to this one?
I will say if there was a major upset on this board this week, this would be the game. But I just don't see it happening. I mean, the Niners dominated both games that they played the Seahawks in this year. And as good as the offense is there, they're a young team. And I don't think that this is a team that's going to, like, they got unlucky with their seeding is really what it was. If they would have played any other team that's playing in the wild card round this week, it would have been like, all right, Seahawks have a legitimate shot. We should see the Seahawks in the second round. But they're running into a buzzsaw, and it'll be interesting to see how Brock Purdy performs in his first playoff experience. But it's just I can't see them winning. In fact, of the other 4 teams playing, I would probably pick the Seahawks over all of them. But I just can't see them beating the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show how we mentioned it's a well-coached team, and also they've had some moments where they've looked really good this season. They're going to have to, but this is the thing, they're going to have to play their best and then some. And the problem is that this 49ers team, its strength, I mentioned Christian McCaffrey, we mentioned the weapons, it's the defense. The 49ers' strength is the defense.
even if they play their best, you can't necessarily guarantee that you're going to beat the 49ers. Their
Right.
best is as good, if not
Agreed.
the best in the NFL. They're
Yeah.
arguably the most complete team in the league right now, especially if you're going to have Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, playing at the level he's been playing at and having the output that they've had on offense. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the strongest they've looked on offense all year.
There's a reason why they haven't. There's a reason why they haven't lost a game in 3 months.
Yeah.
They finished the season on fire, well enough so this team is looking like a buzzsaw, like Justin said. It's going to be interesting to see how they move on in the playoffs. Let's talk about the game tonight that is projected to be way closer. I think everyone would agree on this basis, even aside from our friends at Caesar Sportsbook giving us just a Chargers favored by 1.5 heading into this one. Jacksonville Jaguars, the winners of the AFC South, saving us from another Tennessee Titans playoff appearance, going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers, despite having the wild card, the 5th seed, I should say, wrapped up after the 49ers, or after the Ravens lost earlier in the day, if I'm not mistaken, decided, we're still going to play our guys. And 2 of those guys got hurt. Nick Bosa, I think I haven't seen a confirmation if he's out yet or not. Mike Williams, I saw, is going to be out for this game. Massive blow there for a Los Angeles Chargers team that really, let's be honest, this season, even making the playoffs, even getting 10 wins, pretty disappointing in terms of some preseason expectations and also just all around what you thought of this team. They're not as strong, they're not as convincing as we would have thought going into this. So Justin, I want to throw it to you first. Jaguars, Chargers, who are you picking to come out of this one?
Well, the Chargers have been very disappointing, especially for all those people that picked them to win 16 games this year. So I know they've been banged up. They are looking to possibly get back Rashawn Slater this week, which would be a huge, huge help for them on their offensive line. He was their all-pro left tackle that they drafted a couple of years ago. Mike Williams hurts, but I will say that this team is still has the tools to be an offensive juggernaut with or without him. Obviously, you are better with a receiver like Mike Williams on the field, but they still have Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. They still have, Josh Palmer, who's played well, Gerald Everett, who wasn't the big help at tight end statistically that they thought would be this year, but he has caught a couple of good balls. They have a chance to make this game a shootout, which is what I think they're going to have to do. Jacksonville has this habit of getting behind early and having to come back, and their defense does play very well in the second half. They played well on offense, on offense. They played well on defense in the second half as well. We've seen a lot of interceptions. So it's going to be an interesting game. I definitely think this is the most interesting game this weekend, I believe. A lot of the AFC games are kind of if there was less injuries and we had a couple more quarterbacks playing, they'd be much more interesting. But they're not. They're just not playing. So it's not as exciting a week as I think it's going to, as I thought it might be a couple weeks ago. But I do think this is going to be the most interesting game. If I had to pick a team, I'm leaning towards Los Angeles.
Okay. Interesting there, to say the least. So the home Jaguars do not stay in the playoffs for that much longer. According to Justin, he has the Chargers winning in this one. Oh, by the way, we're not officially keeping this as like a scorekeeper, ladies and gentlemen, for like we did with the regular season, but we might have some fun with this, so we will be giving our predictions. Obviously, the panel concluded the 49ers are beating the Seahawks, so moving on from that, just to clarify for the people. Rick, Jaguars, Chargers, in your opinion, are you on the same boat as Justin? Does the Mike Williams injury make any difference to you? Does Duval County get a playoff win this year with top 10 head coach Doug Peterson? Or will the Chargers, in your opinion, they were going to be the equivalent of the Undertaker this year, will they move on to the divisional round?
Well, 2 quick things before I give my prediction. Number 1, I do want to say, Jurg, you had a Justin moment. Joey Bosa's on the Chargers. You said Nick Bosa's on the Chargers.
Oh, Lord.
So
if you've noticed, actually, I never say which Bosa. I just say Bosa of the Chargers,
yes,
and Bosa on the Niners, because I never remember.
And number 2, and number
to be fair,
2,
at least I confuse brothers. The quarterbacks that he confuses are not related.
Hey,
and the second,
brothers,
but Justin, you're not escaping from this either, because you made a knock and by 16-1 Chargers pick. That's fine. Now I hope the Texans win every AFC South for the rest of your life. Just to mess with you.
That's cool. Let's bet a couple Cole Strange jerseys on it.
Anyway, moving on.
If we keep betting Cole Strange jerseys, his jersey skills are going to skyrocket.
Ridiculous.
Rick will have all of them because he's betting on the Texans to win divisions.
I know. Well, it could be anybody else. Look,
Cole Strange.
Yeah. Look, the Chargers. Yeah, the Mike Williams injury does hurt them considerably. This is the game that I'm going to call the ticket to hell game because the winner will go to Kansas City. Because I'm not picking. I'm telling you from my hand, we're not picking Baltimore or Miami to win their games. We're not. So this is going to be the ticket to hell game because whoever wins this game is going to get led to slaughter by Andy Reid, like the cheeseburgers that he devours on a Saturday night in the barbecue joints. And they're good. They are good barbecue cheeseburgers. The Jaguars are a young team, and they're a team that has nothing really to play for. This is a team that had no expectations going into this year. They were the number one pick last year. The Chargers, meanwhile, there's a lot on the line for them because they didn't make the playoffs last year on a gaffe by their head coach. They made the playoffs this year in spite of a gaffe by their head coach. And Dean Spanos, their owner, has a pretty quick trigger finger. So you could argue that if the Chargers do not win this game, Brandon Staley could be on the chopping block, especially if Sean Payton is still available. The Chargers might be one of those teams that could look at Sean Payton and say, come teach Justin Herbert how to be Drew Brees. It'd be an interesting full circle because Brees started his career with the Chargers. The Jaguars defense is young. They're gritty. They are a very hungry team. And again, when you have nothing to play for, you go with the team that has nothing to play for. So I'm taking the Jaguars in this one. I think yes, Duval County gets their one requisite playoff win in the span of a decade. And then, we'll see what happens next week when they play to Kansas City. But I give the Jaguars a fighting chance here. I like Trevor Lawrence as the quarterback in the situation. It will be probably a shootout, but the fact that you have Mike Williams versus a team that has a resurgent Christian Kirk and a resurgent Evan Ingram is significant to me. I think the Jags will feed off winning yet last week, and they'll continue.
So you're telling me that Trevor Lawrence is the greatest Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback we've had since Blake Bortles?
Mark Brunell.
Wow.
I don't count Blake Bortles in this.
Why not?
I don't either.
Why not? Because he was terrible.
He was bad.
Hey.
The defense got them to that title game, and you know it.
He was 10 points away from a Super Bowl.
The defense got them to that title game, and you know it.
Blake Bortles had an arm. And Allen Robinson and who was the other receiver there?
That should just go to show.
Well, Mark Brunell had Keenan McCardell and Jimmy Smith and Fred Taylor back in the day. The Jaguars of the 90s were a really good team. The Jaguars of the 2017s, they got lucky.
That defense was
the defense led them in the title game. And Doug Marrone was their head coach. We almost had to say Super Bowl winning head coach Doug Marrone. I would have thrown up.
Honestly, that Jaguars defense, hot take. I think they would have. I think they would have devoured Nick Foles in that Super Bowl. I think
absolutely
destroyed them.
Billy Special, no, sir.
Jalen Ramsey would have picked them off twice. Like that. Yeah. That Jaguars defense deserved to win the Super Bowl. Sadly, they had Blake Bortles as quarterback. All right,
exactly.
My pick for this one. It's so tough because Joey Bosa being a little bit hampered hurts them on defense, but you still have Derwin James, you still have Khalil Mack, you still have a couple weapons there. On the defensive side of things, I am a little bit concerned because this Jaguars defense, it's not that they've played elite. Like, they've had some really good games, but they've come up with big moments. Josh Allen's fumble recovery in the last game against the Titans was big. The pick six to beat the Cowboys was massive. Like, the Jaguars defense has had moments. And sometimes in the playoffs, it just takes one shining moment, as we have used that term and song a million times in several playoffs, not even just the NFL, just sports in general. But I need to be a man of my word. I picked the Chargers earlier this week. Yes, it was before the Mike Williams injury, but I need to be a man of conviction, and I need to be a man of my word. I'm going to stick with the Chargers for my winner in this game. But I will say, I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form if the Jaguars could go in and move on in this one. Now, will they get obliterated by Kansas City? Yes. Will the Chargers probably lose to Kansas City handily? Yes. I don't say obliterated because for some reason the Chargers play Kansas City close no matter what the situation is. I can't explain it. They just tend to do that no matter what. Anyways. But yeah, I think between Herbert and Lawrence, it's very close. Well, I don't want to say it's very close. Herbert is a very good quarterback. Lawrence has shown flashes. I think Herbert will be able to do just enough more. The way I described this game earlier in the week was I think whoever gets the ball last is going to win this game. I think whoever gets the ball last is going to decide the fate of this game. And I think it's going to end up being the Chargers because it feels like this is the kind of situation that the Chargers would end up getting the ball last in. So I'm going to say the Chargers are going to win this game very narrowly over the Jaguars and move on. I will say, though, Rick, I don't think it's a hot take. I think going into next season, if the Chargers were to lose this game against the Jags, I think Brendan Staley needs to start next season at minimum as a 3 on the head coach hot seat meter from a 1 to 5. And you can make the argument for a 4 because that decision to play his starters vehemently in week 18 to the night, it's not even playing your starters and like taking them out after the first quarter, like quarter and a half. That we could have understood. No, he played them basically the whole game. They lost to the Broncos, and you lost Joey Bosa and Mike Williams in that game. Mike Williams definitively for this playoff game. Joey Bosa, is he playing this game? I think
he is, but I mean, he's conditioning, so he's not going to be at 100%.
Yeah, he's probably not even going to be every single down in this game. No. I mean, if he is, he's a warrior, but I highly doubt it. So that's going to be the case in this one. We could skip ahead. So we decided on the Saturday games. Excuse me. Let's go to Sunday. We really only need to talk about one of these games here. Rick already said it. Does there need to be any more analysis? The Buffalo Bills are going to be taking on Skylar Thompson and the Miami Dolphins. And the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be taking on Anthony Brown, most likely. I mean, I know Tyler Huntley's warming up, but Anthony Brown is probably going to have to come in at some point. The Bengals and Bills are going to win this game. They're going to face each other in the next round. Like, let's sign, sealed, shut, and delivered, unless Justin wants to give a hot take here.
No, I don't want to give a hot take. It's a shame that we're not going to be able to see the wildcard teams at their best, just due to some injuries. There is one major repercussion for the Ravens, considering Lamar is a free agent, and now he's going to miss a playoff game. It's the second year in a row where his injuries have really cost them a shot at doing something.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the Ravens react to that. They owe him a lot of money. He has said he does not want to play on the franchise tag. So it'll be interesting to see if they get a contract done or if they say, hey, you're you're one too many injuries away from winning a Super Bowl for us, and we're going to move on.
Okay. Not to mention the fact, too, that, I mean, Tyreek Hill got a little banged up in the last game of the season against the Jets. That happens when you face an all-pro corner named Sauce Gardner. But, beside that, so Miami and Raheem Mostert, I think, is out as well for Miami because he got a broken thumb. So, Miami's not at full strength. So, Buffalo's going to cakewalk their way through, which is as it should be. A Buffalo-Pittsburgh wildcard game would have been great, but a Buffalo-Miami one is garbage. Yeah. And then the Baltimore game, look, before the year, I said something about Baltimore tells me that they're not going to make the playoffs. And I was wrong about them not making the playoffs. But this is not the Ravens at full strength. And this is another year in which the Ravens are going into the playoffs not at full strength, and it's concerning. It's concerning for this team that they're going to limp into this game against their division rivals who, if they had just won that game, it would have possibly hosted. It would have been a coin flip to see who would have hosted a divisional game, which is ridiculous to me. But, they didn't show up because they didn't have Lamar. They didn't have a lot of their guys. They don't have wide receivers. I mean, Sammy Watkins is Sammy Watkins, but they don't have Duvernay. They don't have Bateman. It's not a good Ravens team. It really isn't. 6 and 7 in the AFC are, I don't want to use the term garbage, but they are just really
not. They deserve
they're
to
not
be there, but they've been ravaged by injuries. And you got to say, at least with the Ravens, it does seem like the upper management has kind of failed them a little bit. I mean, I know they've failed Lamar. They haven't been able to give him the weapons he needs to keep the pressure off him, which, I mean, may or may not have resulted in his knee injury because he's taking so many hits and so much pressure. It could just be that, it's not a viable form of play, but, they've also had tons of injuries along the defense that have really resulted in them not playing well either. So, I
don't want to, like I said, I don't want to say they're garbage, but I do want to kind of like it this. They are happy they made the playoffs, but they will be happy when it's over because they can all rest and get healthy.
Let's call it like it is. These guys are not NFL starters. They're backups.
Yeah. They're barely backups.
And it's unfortunate. Yeah. They're not bad players. They're great role pieces, etc. They've made the playoffs. They've done something that all 32 teams were trying to do, and they were better even with their backups. That being said, these are not teams. Well, this would be the Cinderella of all Cinderella stories in the NFL if either of these teams made some noise in the playoffs.
I do want to throw damp wet cloth on what you said. All 32 teams are trying to make the playoffs. I think it's 31. We don't know what the hell Houston's doing. So
to be fair,
I can't believe I counted them as an NFL team.
I was going to say,
what are you doing? Yeah, no.
Damn it, Houston.
To this day. No, I'm with you. Like there's no reason. Like Justin trying to be nice to these guys. I'm not going to be nice at all. The Baltimore Ravens and Miami Dolphins barely have quarterbacks I would even consider backup caliber. Teddy Two Gloves is injured, so I'm not counting him as a part of that notion. Tyler Huntley lost himself a lot of money. This is another case.
Third string quarterbacks right now.
But what I'm saying is that this is another case where an offensive coordinator is trying to run the same scheme with a similar skill set quarterback, and it's not working. Like the Greg Roman, John Harbaugh, and this is why the episode title is named the way it is. Are you there, football gods? It's me, John Harbaugh. Because you got to be praying to every single god you can conceivably think of John Harbaugh to even have a snowball's chance in hell to win this game. The Bengals are going to win this game handily, and there's going to be a lot of questions in the offseason. And I got to say, well, first off, honestly, if I'm Baltimore, I hate to say this because I don't like taking people's jobs away. I need to consider firing my medical staff here. Because over the last couple seasons, it's Lamar Jackson getting hurt back-to-back years around the same time. It's my running backs getting hurt in the preseason every single freaking year. It's Rashad Bateman being banged up in both of his first 2 seasons in the NFL. There's something in the water in Baltimore that needs to be fixed, or the medical staff, one or the other.
Question: do you do a clean sweep? Because John Harbaugh has been there for a long time, and they have not won since Ray Lewis has retired. There's got to be a point where you say, "Listen, Marvin Lewis, you won a bunch of regular season games, but you didn't do anything for me in the playoffs." And again, I know it's not necessarily on Harbaugh. I know I said Marvin Lewis on purpose.
No, I know.
Okay, I know it's not on Harbaugh. A lot of these injuries, but I mean, if you're gonna blame management and then say, "All right, management, we got to get someone who's gonna bring in people with the correct medicals," then are you keeping Harbaugh? I know he's gonna end up being a Hall of Fame coach, but
is
he won that much?
But Baltimore won the Beyonce Bowl, didn't they?
That was the last time they won.
Yeah, but that wasn't Ray Lewis. He was already gone by that point.
No,
he was still there on the team.
That was his last game. That was his last game.
He killed the guy. Anyways, anyway,
you know what? Hold on. No. I'm muting you. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, that was Ray Lewis's last season before he retired.
Thank you, Justin. So, dear Lord, I will say this: like, no, you are not being unmuted until the next game. We don't care. In regards to the Ravens, one last thing I want to mention here before moving on. I'm with you on the whole contract thing. Listen, I've made it clear in all our football conversations. I spare no bones. I wouldn't care. Like, I would gladly fire a guy who's won a Super Bowl before. The John Harbaugh's jewelry does not bother me in any which way. I would keep him. Here's the thing. I would keep him if they're losing Lamar, because I think you need to have a guy that's been there long enough to be stable enough. I would make that argument if they lose Lamar Jackson.
Well,
if they keep him.
If they're doing a clean sweep, I mean clean sweep. I mean, let's see what assets we can get for our top guys. We have some young pieces on defense. We'll trade Marcus Peters. See what we can get for Lamar. See what we can get for Calais Campbell, who's 38 and he's playing well. We'll get a clean sweep with our coaches. We'll get some new GMs in here. Let's see if we can get a fresh start in Baltimore. We've been a championship organization, a gold standard for the last 20 years, and 10-6 limping into the playoffs with our backups is not where we want to be. We are a championship organization. Let's be a championship organization again. And if that means fresh slate, that's what I got to do. And I'm not saying this is the correct answer or not, but if you're going to do a clean sweep, I'm talking clean sweep.
I'm good with it. But like, hey, you're asking me. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I do not burn my bridges. I napalm them. I would gladly napalm that entire situation. like I would make no bones about it. If you're asking me, would I do it? Probably.
And a major question there is if you are getting rid of Harbaugh, are you comfortable having him be on the opposite sideline, because he will get another job in the NFL,
even though he probably should. But irregardless,
coach,
I'm sick of him. He can go coach with his brother in college for all I care. Even though he's probably not a college. Like,
it'd be funny if they flipped all of a sudden one.
Imagine.
Yeah.
No, it'd be even funnier if John Harbaugh replaces Jim in Michigan and Jim replaced John in Baltimore. That would actually be hilarious.
That would be something.
Irregardless. So it'll be interesting. We're definitely going to be talking about the Lamar Jackson situation over the coming weeks and months, because that'll be something to take a hold of. In fact, there is, we mentioned Miami. I'm sure Miami's going to be willing to throw a checkbook at Lamar Jackson this offseason if they choose to move on from Tua, if they think he's too injury prone as well. So it'll be, but again, conversation for a future time. Let's get to the one game on Sunday that is worth it. New York Giants at Minnesota Vikings, a rematch from the regular season meeting that took a long distance kick. I'm forgetting the distance off the top of my head. Was it a 60-yarder by the Vikings to win the game?
50s.
It was 50s?
It was a long kick, but it was in the 50s.
I thought it was a 60-yarder. I don't know why I did.
51?
I will grant him the unmute.
61.
There we go. Thank you.
61? I don't remember being that long.
Yeah.
There we go. So, Rick, I will start with you. You have been unmuted. You have been allowed to speak again. The New York Giants are going against Minnesota Vikings. It's very interesting to see here. The Giants are a team that we have said an unsustainable style of play. We've seen it in the second half of the season. We've seen teams start to figure them out. We've seen this Giants team. They have flaws, and if you can get them on their flaws, you're going to beat them. Here's the thing, though. The Minnesota Vikings are a team that can certainly be flawed in and of themselves. We saw the Giants nearly beat them. We saw the Dallas Cowboys destroy them. We saw the Eagles destroy them. The Commanders barely lost to them. So the NFC East has the Vikings number this season, apparently. Yeah. Irregardless, that aside, do you think, Rick, the Giants pull off the upset? Do they beat the Vikings in the wild card round?
So here's the thing about this. Everybody, it seems, is picking the Giants to beat the Vikings. Everybody is. That's all the media can talk about is how the Vikings ended the year poorly. The Giants are this team of destiny. They have a lot of comparison to the 2011 Giants and the 2007 Giants. And there might be some truth in all those elements. But the biggest thing that does is that provides a bulletin board material for the Minnesota Vikings. And look at it like this. Yeah, you were a field goal away from having a tie game going to overtime. But now you got one game against Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Maybe Dalvin Cook. I don't know what his status is. But the Minnesota defense is not good. This is the biggest toss-up for me because you are hoping that Daniel Jones stays sustainable because I think this is the game that will determine whether or not Daniel Jones gets his big contract in the offseason or not. It is. If he performs well, win or loss, yes, he does. If he doesn't, I can see them offering him less money because, sure, you played really good in the regular season, but when the game counted, it was one and done. You played like your brother across the river, Zach Wilson. So, this is a very big toss-up for me. By legal declaration and proclamation of the fact that I have a marriage license to a Giants fan, I am picking the New York Giants to win this game. I can see it going either way. I would love for the Giants to win this game as well, but a lot of the talk has been about the Giants not, doing what's needed to be done here. And a lot of talk has been about the Vikings being this poor team. It's a battle of first-year head coaches, guys. It really is. And that's the most fun thing about the whole thing. But I don't know. I can see it going either way. And again, if the Vikings do win, I'm not going to be surprised because the way that everyone's been talking about the Giants are going to beat the Vikings and the way that even Vikings are just saying, I don't look forward to this game. I don't know. It smells like there could be a Minnesota Miracle Part 2 in the works.
Ooh, a Minnesota Miracle Part 2.
Yeah. I picked the Giants a bunch of times coming around this week. And the more I think about it, I know it would be just such a Minnesota thing to lose this game, but they really shouldn't. They really are the better team. If you want to talk about well-coached teams, O'Connell has done a very good job, especially offensively. He's got Kirk Cousins looking like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now. And I know they have a lot of great weapons there, but, it's not about always having the weapons. Look at Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. They're not in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So to make it parallel to Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, who are on a 13-win team playing a Giants team, they have a chance of going to the divisional round and making some noise. They are that hot offense. And I know that their defense has been really, really poor, but they do cause turnovers. And Patrick Peterson is a good leader on that defense, I feel. So I think we should expect a Minnesota win. I wouldn't be overly surprised if the Giants win. This is, in my opinion, probably the closest game, if not for that game we're going to talk about for Monday night. But I think the closer we get to it, the closer I'm leaning Minnesota. I don't think it's a miracle either. I think they're going to win. I think they're probably going to lead most of the game. If the Giants win, it's going to be more of like a comeback thing where they get like a fourth quarter touchdown and they're able to hold Minnesota down. But I don't think they're going to score enough in the first three quarters to keep up with Minnesota.
There's one other narrative, too, that I also want to just quickly spout. A lot of the talk in New York has been about the Giants need to end the drought. It's been since 2011 since a New York team has won a championship, and that's a problem. because the Giants were the last team. You know, I'm not counting on my CFC, even though we should, but we're not. You know, it's been since 1991 that the state of Minnesota has had a Big Four champion. The Twins in 91 were the last team from Minnesota to win a Big Four championship. So you want to talk about droughts? There's that angle of it too. Like it's a lot of the things, and this is a knock on us as New Yorkers. A lot of the things that we see come from the fact that we live in this bubble, the major media market in the world that everybody wants to go to, that everybody wants to play in. And yet, once you take a step outside and see, oh, Minnesota hasn't won anything in 31 years, 32 years, it puts things into perspective a little bit, you know? Like, it really does. As Jets fans, we have nothing to show for it, but, you know, the rest of the world, Jurg is a Blackhawk and Heat fan. He knows about winning championships before longer than we have. So, I'm trying not to get muted again.
He's got in my good books, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to say, I don't know if this was just before, just after we started the show, I want to give Rick a little bit of good news and an olive branch for having had to mute him. The report via Jonathan Jones, Rick Sam Howell is expected to be quarterback one when Washington begins offseason work in the new league year.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that. I think it's pretty good.
I had to give you the update for your.
He played well. I don't mind that. Yeah.
There you go. I'm going with the Giants in this one for the sheer fact that, boys, what happens at around 4:30 p.m. or so? It's the NFL playoffs.
Yeah.
What happens at 4:30 p.m.? You know, you're starting to think about what you want for dinner. You had lunch a couple hours ago. It's Sunday. You're relaxing. Yes, you have work. Actually, it's MLK Day weekend. Actually, so you probably don't even have. I have work Monday, sadly, but most people, normal people, don't. But what happens at 4:30 p.m., boys?
Cinderella turns into a pumpkin, and Cinderella's Kirk Cousins.
Sure. What I was going to say is the sun, very slowly, inch by inch, starts to go down for our point of view.
And by proxy.
The clock will strike midnight on good old Captain Primetime Kirk Cousins.
Exactly.
He's going to choke. He has one playoff win in his career. Justin Jefferson is great. Dalvin Cook is great. Kevin O'Connell, when you get a really good quarterback in there, I have faith in you, but you don't have that. Now, does this mean I have faith in Daniel Jones? Absolutely not. Does this mean I have faith in the Giants receivers to have a big game? Absolutely not. I'm just solely banking on the fact that Def Taxes and Kirk Cousins is going to choke in the most important game of the season, which he's done many times before. So until the narrative gets rewritten, I'm going to have it be that. And I'm not only going to have it be where Kirk Cousins throws 2 interceptions in this game, I'm going to have the Vikings miss a field goal at the end to cost them the game as well. So I'm going to triple down on the playoff pain here. And if I'm right, I think we need to take a Vegas trip, a boys trip to Vegas, first of all.
Oh, we're spinning that narrative now that the Vikings kickers can't make a kick in the postseason.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because it spans generations.
Gary Anderson, Blair Walsh. Yeah, it does. It does span generations.
It's time.
Listen, I got news for you because there's plenty of pressure on the Giants too. I mean, you want to talk?
No, there's not.
This is Daniel Jones. This is Daniel Jones' Super Bowl. This is a $10 million game for him.
There's pressure on Daniel Jones. There is absolutely zero pressure on Brian Daboll. Nobody on the show.
But you know what? You know what? Brian Daboll isn't on the field. And the fact is, this is a big money game for both Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, especially Daniel Jones. Saquon will probably get paid, even if it's not with the Giants.
Yeah, there's
going to be a team out there that's going to say, I saw what Saquon's been able to do. I saw what he did last year. On my team, he could do that again, and I'll pay him a decent amount of money.
The Jets.
Daniel, seriously, this could be the difference between an $18 to $20 million a year contract and a $8 to $10 million a year contract.
Yeah.
This is a humongous game. Can Daniel Jones do it on the big stage, or is he a guy that we're going to play around? Is he a game manager? And you're going to see, and he doesn't. It's not like he's got all of these great weapons out there. It is going to be Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley show. So this is possibly the biggest game of his career. Well, it's definitely the biggest game of his career. And financially, this is his Super Bowl right here. He needs to play well.
Yeah, he does. So does Kirk Cousins, but for a different reason altogether.
No. Kirk Cousins, that guy.
Yeah.
So
every game in the playoffs is his Super Bowl until he makes the Super Bowl.
Every primetime game is his Super Bowl.
Right.
And he's got the worst record in NFL history. Anyways, moving past that, so we have our selections there. Me and Rick with the Giants. Rick in part to keep his marriage intact, and Justin going with the Minnesota Vikings here. I mean, I will agree with this point that you guys make. Like, a lot of people are really pushing the Giants like an upset narrative, and that makes me think like, oh crap, they're going to lose this game by like 14. Like, they're going to lose by 2 touchdowns because everyone is picking them, which has me angry because I've been on the whole Vikings are going to choke for like at least the last 2 months of the season. But, the media always catches on everything late, don't they? To the last game, like Justin kind of made mention of before, Monday Night Football. It's very ironic that this game is going to be the last game of Wild Card Weekend because this game has been towards the start of the season the last couple of years now. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home versus the Dallas Cowboys. The 12-5 Cowboys versus the 8-9 Buccaneers. The NFC South winning Buccaneers, which is the equivalent of a participation trophy for coming 97th in a 100-person race marathon. At the end of it, simply put, Rick, we have on one end of the annoying to the NFL fans as a whole spectrum, the Dallas Cowboys. On the other hand, we have, and there's only 2 hands this time, we have Tom Brady. Thomas Aloysius 7 Super Bowls Brady versus the Dallas Cowboys brand. Who loses? No matter who wins and who loses, part of America wins and part of America loses here. So who is going to win this game?
I think his middle name's Edward, actually.
I don't care. It's Aloysius.
Who loses, we all lose because this has to be a game we have to watch. I mean, we could choose not to watch it, but that's not here nor there. This is a game that had a ton more potential if this was a few years back when Dak Prescott was still a decent enough quarterback and not throwing pick sixes all the time, and when Tom Brady was a little younger and had weapons, and Tampa Bay was 13-4, not 8-9. This is the saddest wild card game I think I've ever seen. This is like the equivalent of a divorced dad's refrigerator. This is how sad this game is right now. Who wins? I don't know. I mean, the narrative is that Dallas hasn't won a road playoff game in 30 years, which is an amazing stat if you think about it, that they haven't won a road playoff game since the days of Barry Switzer and Jimmy Johnson, which is just incredible. Can they do it against Tampa Bay? I don't know but I don't know if Tampa Bay has enough. It's literally going to be who wants to lose this game less, basically. Because this game I can see being a 12-10 battle of field goals. And if it comes down to a battle of field goals, I trust Brett Maher a little bit more than Ryan Suckup. I get it. Ryan Suckup is a Mr. Irrelevant guy, but Brett Maher's got range, and
my argument for that would be it's not necessarily about the kickers. I mean, yeah, sure, you would maybe trust one more than the other, but it's about getting into range.
But that's the question: is who? I think Tampa Bay. I think Brady can make one more mistake than Prescott can, and I also think too that if Dallas is going to win this game, they need a big showing from their running game. Which take the ball out of Prescott's hands and just feed it to Zeke or feed it to Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard especially. The weeks have gone on, I've been very impressed with what Tony Pollard has done. And against this Tampa Bay defense that needs to stop the run, if you change the pace with 2 different backs, you might be able to open up that passing game a little bit more for Dalton Schultz and CeeDee Lamb. But this is not a game I'm looking forward to. It really isn't. By proxy, I'm picking Dallas because, it doesn't really matter unless 2 and 3 go chalk. Then it's a question of who gets to play Philadelphia. And a Dallas-Philadelphia game after what we saw on Thanksgiving week or not Thanksgiving, like Christmas week would be amazing again. But it's like, do I really have to watch this game? Can I find some other activity? Can I find a scrapbook to do on Monday night instead, or a stamp collection that I can start on Monday night instead? Or can I light my hair on fire at the gas stove on Monday night instead of watching this game? Whatever hair I have left, apparently. I don't know. I'm very torn here. I really am. I'll pick Dallas to win.
Rick carrying on his grandfather's stamp collection legacy would probably be the way to go there.
Also his bad hairline legacy too. So it works.
Sheesh. Also want to mention real quick, Tony Pollard, also a big game for him. His first 1,000-yard season of his career. If they can utilize him properly, he could be in line. I think he'll be in line for a good payday. If he tears it up in the playoffs for Dallas, he's in line for a big payday, potentially. Yeah. He could be like the next running back off the market. It's Jacobs, Barkley, and I think Pollard's probably the number 3 guy. So
probably
he could definitely cut a nice check for himself. Boys, I've made a lot of references throughout our 42 weeks doing the show. Technically 43 with the pilot episode. I have a lot of sayings that I like to repeat. death taxes, and I like saying death taxes a lot. But another thing that I've said a number of times is I would rather trust the devil I know than the devil I don't. And the problem is I see two devils in this game, and I know both of them to be facts. It is the Dallas Cowboys choke away opportunities, and when you think he is done, when you think he is dead, and when you think he's buried, Tom Brady raises a hand out of the dirt like Undertaker at the end of every buried alive match he's ever been in the WWF/WWE/ potentially soon to be owned by a foreign country. He rises from the ashes, from the dirt, from the grave, and he makes us all pay. And I'm not saying this because I'm confident in the Bucs. I'm not confident in them, but Dallas has shown me a lot of reasons as to why they are going to choke this again. I think they underwhelmed at the end. There is no reason they should have lost that Washington Commanders game. Dak Prescott is playing straight up. This was a terrible season from him. He had the same amount of interceptions as Davis Mills and played less games. You missed a chunk of the season. You missed more than a fourth of the season, and you still throw that many interceptions? And that defense, which was so great in the first month and a half of the season, nowhere near the same level as what they were at the start. If this was that same defense at the start of the year, I think it'd be a wash. But it's not. And with Mike McCarthy, that genius there, I'm willing to bet that at some point the Cowboys will play soft zone coverage defense at some point. And who is the quarterback that is best known for tearing up soft zone coverage in the NFL history? It's Tom Brady. The Bucs are going to win this game. They're going to torture us by lasting one more week. And it's going to be Tom Brady against the Philadelphia Eagles in the next round, coming full circle because when the Eagles made it last year, the Bucs beat them. And those were the small signs that the Eagles maybe could have done something this year. It'd be full circle for the Eagles to defeat the Buccaneers this year to prove that they have truly become a good team.
Well, if you have the Giants winning, it won't be the Bucs versus the Eagles.
Oh, good point. NFC Championship game. Bucs.
Well, it would be.
You're gonna have the Bucs beat the Niners?
No, I'm kidding. Let me make the joke narrative. Let me have fun.
Make a joke.
Mute him. Mute him.
I'm about to kick you out. But no, in all seriousness, I don't have them going past the divisional round, but I have the Bucs at least beating the Cowboys. So
I'm gonna have the Bucs beating the Cowboys too.
There we go.
Everything on paper shouts that the Cowboys should win. I mean, they've been the better team all year. I know the Bucs won the week one, but they've lost a lot of players since then. They've been banged up, but something about the way the Cowboys have played the last 4 or 5 weeks does not scream playoff team to me. I mean, the teams that they've played have like stepped up a little bit in caliber, and I know they like blew out Minnesota and whatnot, but teams that were really fighting for playoff spots and were in need of some playoff games, and they couldn't compete, you know? So, I mean, even still, they had a legitimate, if they would win the Jacksonville game and not let it get to overtime, they would have had a legitimate shot at being the number 1 overall seed after last week, playing the Washington Commanders, who were eliminated. And they even dropped that game. So, you know, there's something about the Cowboys that can't be overcome at this point. And if I'm talking about a team I think is going to choke, who better to put them down than Tom Brady, the king of making people choke. So I'm going to go Bucs.
It's a dang shame, ain't it? That man is still getting us.
It's because if you really want to talk about who should go forward and who we would love to see in the playoffs, the Cowboys should be that team.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of Tom Brady. Their team is old and beat up. They're not going to really put up a fight in the second round. I don't think they should. I mean, they're the underdog. They should not win this game. But I can't see the Cowboys winning for whatever reason. I can't see it being done. So
the streak will continue then of road playoff losses.
And Tom Brady's undefeated streak against the Cowboys.
Yeah. And Mike McCarthy will get fired.
Oh, and Sean Payton will be the new Cowboys head coach.
Yeah.
Moving on from all that, we've had a long show. We are just about at the end. We've had fun. We've had fun. We've talked football. I've made my humor about winning the pig challenge. We've tortured Justin about the Texans. We've talked about coaches fire. We've talked about the playoffs. There's only one thing left to do. Rick, take us home.
Yes. Speaking of Dallas, my number 3 rant podium this week is the Dallas Zoo. How do you lose a leopard in the zoo? Now, granted, apparently there was some rumor that the exhibit fence was cut open and the leopard was able to wander around. But here's the fun part. They set out this code blue about this leopard being, escaping its habitat. You know where they found the leopard? In the zoo. So you looked in the zoo, you couldn't find the leopard, so clearly you didn't look well enough to find the leopard, and it was just wandering around the zoo like a normal patron on a Sunday afternoon, strolling with their kids, wanting cotton candy or roasted peanuts and wanting to throw them at the gorillas. It's just like, really? Like, guys, it's a leopard. If you see somebody walking on 4 legs in a zoo with nobody else around, it's probably something that shouldn't really be, in the zoo, just prowling around freely. I'm just saying. Dallas Zoo, like the Dallas Cowboys, you did a very bad job. Number 2, I want to liken this to something. Tom Clare is the gentleman's name who I'm going to be calling out now. He is a striker for Macclesfield Town Football Club in England. And they're in like the 4th division of English football. He has decided mid-season to leave the team to go take part in the BBC reality TV show Love Island. So this is a guy who is leaving his team. And by the way, this is not like a role player. Tom Clare won Macclesfield's Golden Boot last year with the most goals scored on the team. Macclesfield is currently in first place in their division, where if they win, they'll get promoted to the 3rd tier of English football. And yet you want to leave to go try your luck at finding romance on Love Island? This would be like if Aaron Judge, in the midst of his 62 home run season, at 45 home runs, went to Brian Cashman and said, "Hey, Brian, sorry, I'm leaving the team for a month. I'm going to be on Big Brother instead, instead of playing for the Yankees." Like, where are the priorities, man? You're a soccer player who's going to probably have a team be in the top 3, making all this money on the transfer window, and you want to go and do that instead? Be on a terrible reality TV show? Because let's be honest here. Bachelor, Bachelor in Paradise, Temptation Island, Love Island, Big Brother, they're all horrible reality shows. And Justin would know the word I'm thinking of. It's a 4-letter word starting with an S. We all know what they are. But I'm not going to say it because I have somehow the cleanest mouth of the 3 of y'all in this entire podcast when we're not on the air. Justin. Which leads me to number 1. Now, I was going to do something about Robbie Knievel passing because I grew up as a kid watching Robbie Knievel's death jumps, and how amazing I thought it was to watch a stunt daredevil like that. But then there was a story that really irritated me. And I'm going to have my old man, no hair hat on here when I tell this story. This is why I hate TikTok and why I hate social media. So, if you haven't heard about the LSU gymnastics team, you clearly haven't heard of or followed TikTok's superstar, LSU gymnast Olivia Dunn. Now, Olivia Dunn is one of these college athletes who is cashing in on this name, image, and likeness deal. She is the highest paid woman in collegiate sports at $2.3 million a year. She has about 6 million TikTok followers and Instagram followers. Now, they had their first meet in Salt Lake City against Utah. And if you've never been to a gymnastics competition, the decorum for being in the stands at a gymnastics competition is like being in a library or being in a concert hall where, you wait for the routine to end and then you politely applaud or you do whatever the case is. Well, apparently the Utah boys who couldn't get enough of Olivia Dunn on their social media decided to bring signs, chant, and disrupt every routine that wasn't Olivia Dunn. And by the way, Olivia Dunn wasn't even performing. She was out. She's on the sidelines. All of a sudden, everyone's like, "Olivia, get a picture with me, do this, this, this." This is embarrassing on a number of different levels. Number 1, this is a 20-year-old woman who is the object of random Utah boys, dreams and aspirations. And this is a problem with the NIL deal and TikTok in general, but I want to go on society as a whole. Where are we that this is the thing that we're currently dealing with right now, where we are glorifying this and disrupting a sport? It's a sport that has a certain set of rules and decorum, not to mention the fact that you're cheering for a girl who's not even competing on the balance beam or the bars or the vault. She's not even competing in general. Like, we don't care about the 12 athletes on either team who are actually competing in their events, who are applying their craft because, oh my God, this TikTok star, the celebrity is here, and she's the one we want to focus on. There was a tweet that went out that said, this is embarrassing for the sport of gymnastics that this has happened, that you have something like this. And it's absolutely right. And it's embarrassing for society in general that we are going gaga, not over Lady Gaga, because that's acceptable, but going gaga over somebody who didn't even do a damn thing on the sidelines. And because of that, LSU Gymnastics had to beef up security with everything. So now their home meet against Kentucky, which, by the way, they lost, you guys beef up security. When all you want to do is try and go and enjoy a performance or go and enjoy a routine. And, this is just making nonsense. 2023 has started off really roughly, guys. It really, truly has. 2 of us lost the pick challenge to a guy in a Blackhawks sweatshirt. Duncan is still in business. Adam Rank is still making terrible picks. And Belgium still exists. So we're off to a rough year. But it's 2 weeks in, so maybe in the 3rd week or 4th week, we'll get better. But who knows at this point? And that's my podium rant for the week.
Bold prediction. I don't think Belgium is going to be taken away as a country by the end of the year.
I know. But
I can't imagine goes out either.
Yeah. My long-standing vendetta against a country that doesn't even know my name is, going to continue on for months and years just for the hell of it.
Should just start tagging all of our videos, #Belgium.
I am not going to do that. Nope, not doing that. Anyway,
episode 43, #Belgium.
Dear Lord. Oh, my God. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, fun football chaos. That's what the Sports Agents of Chaos are here to give you. That was the end of this week's episode. Another outstanding rant podium. I never thought LSU Gymnastics would make it to the rant podium, but as we say every single week, anything can happen. For those wondering in the audience, we will be making Super Bowl predictions next week because let's get all the random little teams out of the way first before we get to the actual important teams, the big boys making predictions. Then I like ending the show with the rant podium. I think it would be kind of cheap if we just ended with predictions at the end here. So, the rant podium stays as the finale. So next week we'll give you guys some Super Bowl predictions. We will talk about what happened, what's going to happen, all the usual affair here on a weekly basis, every single Saturday morning, barring scheduling issues, but every single Saturday morning and afternoon. We love bringing you guys the show because at the end of the day, we're here to have fun, talk football, and to cause just a little bit of chaos. Thank you all so much for joining us on another episode. We'll see you guys next week.